Welcome back, everyone, as we continue on our trip through the European Championship. Hex Mambo just got their win 2-0. Now we're going to be moving over to the second group. Again, the way this is set up, 8 teams, 2 groups, double elim that feed into a third group that feeds into qualifiers for Worlds that feeds into the actual World Championship. It's a multi-step process, but we get there. It's Gord Strelly, and of course we're going to be going into Group B for this one. You can see behind me the Solar Scarabs, a team that has quite a few players that are going to be joining, or that you should recognize from the past, as well as the other SOC team. So we just saw Yodi Gang, and Strelly, we will be looking over at the Penguins for this one. A couple, I will say, at least one player whose name stands out is one that we have seen in the past in the SEC, and it was done pretty well, and that's lSagerl over in the solo lane. But again, an interesting matchup to say the least, and one where the Penguins are going to be tried. Later on today, at the end of the day, we'll be watching the Wargs take on the Titans, and that's one that I think is going to be very exciting. Again, those are 2 teams that have a lot of history, but so far, they do, well, we'll have to figure out how they're going to go. Right now, though, Trelly, the biggest thing, and as we saw and said with Yodi Gang, is the Penguins taking down the Scarabs, because the Scarabs is Deathwalker, Zyrhoes, SMITE, who recently replaced Demolito, Echrome, and Apreel on this team. A lot of players who have been around the scene for a while, and quite a few who have found a lot of success.
Yep, we just looked at Hex Mambo as that definitive #1 seed, and this is looking like that definitive #2 seed, right? The Scarabs are a roster of completely capable EU players that are going to be scary to go up against, and the Penguins, of course, they know it's a tall task ahead of them. I think you're going to be favoring the Scarabs in a matchup like this, but as we saw in last set, there's always room for upset. There's always room to come back if you can, get your decision making down, if you can look to upset exactly what they want to do. And something that we know the Scarabs like to do is play for that late game pressure, right? That's something that I think the Penguins could definitely try and bring early on. Say, hey, we're not going to let you get comfortable. We're not going to let you get to 30 plus minutes in the game. We want to bring the pressure to you immediately. Try to knock the Scarabs off their game. I think that's where I would start.
It's going to be, again, very difficult, as we just saw, right, when you're taking on some of the top teams in this region. And this, honestly, this is true for the #3 seed as much as it is for your SOC 2 seed. Sometimes, whether it's the draft, you have to get them there, you have to get them on the field, and you can't let up for a single minute, because some of the farm games of these teams, like the Scarabs, like Hex Mambo, can just outpace you. So we'll have to see how the Penguins are going to adapt, specifically when it comes to picks and bans. And that's the real question. Again, what we're looking at, it feels, we're still talking the Raijins, your op washes, we just saw Poseidons, things like that, as being super prevalent. So as we jump into picks and bans here, knowing the Scarabs have first pick, what kind of things could the Penguins do to cut them off before they get there?
Well, I think there's value in both first pick and second pick. It just depends on how you're sort of shaping your draft, right? If there's just one guy that you want to build your draft off of, then first pick's fantastic. But if the Penguins know what one god the Scarabs are going for, they can say, hey, we're going to ban accordingly. We're going to let you grab your one god, but we get 2 initially after that. Not only can deal with, that pressure you're picking or that global presence that you're picking or whatever that may be, you also get the second pick that sort of drives your composition as well. So the Scarabs leading off, they're just going to grab Thoth. That doesn't reveal too much about a draft. It's just a very strong mid laner who's got crazy damage, as we've seen from last game. So I'm never going to get mad about the Thoth.
And it's, fair, right? Like you said, it really doesn't show off too much other than, hey, there's a guy who's going to be shooting you with artillery the entire time. Good luck. Morgan Le Fay and Hachi, though. So Morgan Le Fay has definitely been up there. Hachi has been high prio so far these 3 games we've seen. And it makes sense, right, when it comes to safety and survivability. He's kind of got what you need for it. But it's going to be answered with Heimdallr and Fafnir. And the Fafnir, Trelly, we can have conversations, I think, in and out about. But the Heimdallr comes into a very special conversation, because for a long time, as we had mentioned earlier, in Europe, it was like just... That was the god, you'd first pick it because you knew you could win with it, right? Heimdallr was the go-to up at the top. And the guy that did it the best was Echrome, who locked it in. I think the last time we saw it at a LAN, it did end up, unfortunately, falling. But in Europe, in region, that has been a very deadly Heimdallr combo.
Right, and I think the benefit of that Heimdallr is the safety, which Hachiman also brings. So both ADCs are going to have just a safe time over in lane trying to survive when you got things like Mercury coming your way, when you got things like Najah coming your way. You're going to want the ADCs that
Hera,
don't have to be babysat, right? They can sit in lane, they can teleport away, they can mount an archery away. They have tools to just disengage. So that's the benefit of picks like that. With the Cuckoo coming in towards the end, I love the Kukulkan in this meta. I talked about Thoth earlier, and I said Thoth and Cuckoo, those are my top two that are just like the sleeper mid picks that can bring so much damage. You got a Najah in the mix, now you've got easy setup for it. Spear of the 9 Wid starts hitting even harder.
That's, again, something I'm, man. It's one of my favorite brands of Smite is when like the burst ultimates get to come back in, and it's just because you take the Thoth, you take the Cuckoo, you go back a couple games, you take the Scylla, things like that, Vulcan. Sometimes the fight just changes, man. And it's just, did you hit your buttons and did you hit them well? If the answer to that is yes, then you've done a great job for your team. You've got that combo. I mean, the Penguins, with that, the Cuckoo plus the Najah, it's very Kings reminiscent, right? Like that's the kind of draft that they've been running or will run in some of the most trying times. And then you add that in with, like a Ganesha, and suddenly you've got a lot of disruption to help that Cuckoo hit his shots.
And that's the idea, right? Play through those burst ultimates. You've got the Hera, you've got the Thoth on the other side, so there's going to be a lot of burst in play that you have to watch out for. But I'll be keeping my eyes on Final Judgment and, of course, Spirit of the 9 Winds.
Well, that's fun. Again, I'm excited to see the Penguins, again, have a hill to overcome. The question is whether or not they can do it. And to answer that question, we're going to go over to the casters.
Thank you, Gore, on the desk. That's right, it's Judas and it's Mifflin, and, we've got some very interesting drafts coming up here from both sides. Now, it was already touched on the desk that the Solar Scarabs quite like to head to the late game. And what they've done with that is they've just decided to pick a draft that completely, really wants to go to the late game and pretty much nothing else.
Yeah, I mean, I'm seeing a certain capacity to be able to just run through neutral objectives. That's afforded to you anytime you've got something like a Fafnir on your team composition.
Look at this.
So ability to look towards objectives maybe to get them to that late game.
Well, hold on. Silence wants to slap away and trying to hammer down one of these camps at least, but not able to do it. Actually just going to follow along to the purple buff instead. I'm sure the Penguins are aware of it. There's the horrific out and everything. I do wonder if he's even going to be able to get one of these camps. Still all red so far. But it's very, very slow, and look at this. Penguins are forced to delay even further. Silence does not get it, but manages to stall a heck of a lot of time.
Yeah, I mean, that was very dangerous. I didn't particularly love how the Penguins were cutting that. They could have pulled it much further towards their side of the map before leaving it up to that 50-50, but regardless, we're rewarded by being able to grab that purple buff for themselves. Difference is, though, iSilenced now essentially without farm for the first minute of the game. Should put the Penguins dual lane as a whole in a pretty decent position, but Echrome himself, a pretty significant lead over his direct counterpart, Krakito.
Well, yeah, looking at both sides, I would have expected Silence. On this Fafnir, when you do draft this god, generally you're actually looking to pull some early objectives, burst them down quickly. Often see a frenzy coming through combined with that, but Silence, like we said, with the draft being late game focused, has gone for the horrific. Maybe try to just slow the pace down of the game, because even when we do get to these late game stages, there's not going to be a whole lot of setup for the Solar Scarabs. They're sort of relying on their mechanical ability to try to turn the fights against the Penguins.
Yeah, I mean, you've got some level of CC, right? Anything Mercury does, ultimate, the dash as well, going to be able to set up pretty well for Zyrhoes. Echrome's ultimate, although single target, similarly has a combo like what Varis is bringing to the Penguins on the other side. You can go for the Heimdallr into Thoth ultimate every single time, similar to the Kukulkan Najah combo, but a little bit more risky for Echrome to be leveraging his own HP bar and positioning in those team fights. So a little bit more likely, I think, to see the Penguins get aggressive early on. I'll be keeping my eyes on Varis. Yep. Feels like he's got a lot of onus to make the pace happen throughout the early game. You don't want the Solar Scarabs making their way to late game on the path of least resistance. You got to put some speed bumps on that road. Otherwise, just looking at the scaling nature of their composition, as well as the fact that the Solar Scarabs are the more veteran team here, would be very concerning. I'd love to see the Penguins start establishing some pace around that level 5 to 6 mark.
Yep, of course, the biggest speed bump possible in the game, possibly, is that Windfire Wheels combo into the Spirit of the Nine Winds. But you have to connect with those. You know, we do see plenty of sets of beads on the side of the Solar Scarabs. Already Varis going for an early buff invade, and yeah, sashes onto Apreel. There is the clapping hands coming through, and Deathwalker hits 5 and just blows the ultimate, trying to chase away now the rest of the Penguins. And Sega's taking an absolute ton of damage. Not quite enough. Apreel dashes in, doesn't get the major look. There's a good artillery sash comes through, gets the beads, I think, from Apreel, does Varis, but Deathwalker hits 5 and just uses that ultimate.
Wonder if Apreel could have got involved a little bit faster there. Deathwalker immediately going into the fight the second he gets that blue buff farm. Meanwhile, on left, Silenced, trying to reprise the same play.
Yeah, just wanting to go for it again. Does throw out the hammer for a bit of extra damage and does not, again, get the purple buff. But it's not about securing the objective, really. It's all about putting the pressure on. And if you do happen to get that camp steal, I mean, that's just a big bonus.
It would have been nice. iSilenced spends a lot of his time in the jungle so far. Throughout the 4 minutes we've watched, I'd say 2 minutes of which have been spent attempting to invade, be it the purple buff or the green buff now. So a little ways off level 5, sitting comfortably at 3. As opposed to 4 from the Ganesha on the other side. You really want that Fafnir ultimate. A lot of Fafnir's utility in teamfight comes from that transformation, especially throughout the early game. Feels like Fafnir's base stance is just incredibly weak. So getting that dragon form should be at the forefront of iSilenced's mind. But for now, it's just about being annoying, even at his own detriment.
Yeah, I suppose the combination of Ganesha and Hachiman and the Penguins dual lane can't really do a whole lot to punish you, right? Like what are they going to do? Get pressure in lane? Like, no, that's not at all what that pairing is designed to do. So I suppose Silence, like you said, at the detriment to themselves, but the big benefit to Echrome, just putting themselves a bit behind. But I mean, you know, you wouldn't say it's been exactly a negative so far. The goal across the board is 500 gold or so in favor of the Solar Scarab. So right now, they're not really feeling the pain from it.
No, experience largely even as well. Largest, perhaps, difference being towards the center of the map. I believe Zyrhoes hit 7 slightly beforehand, so we've got a half-level lead there. Nearly an entire level for Echrome as of right now, too, but parity on the other side is that Ganesh is matching up with iSilenced. But with all that said, nothing really accomplished by either side just yet, meaning that the Solar Scarabs, with their late-game composition, starting to move themselves over towards that point. There is now that level 5 to 6 mark hit, and Varis poses a significant threat, at least towards beads, but unable to connect that sash means that Echrome will make himself scarce and gets to maintain all of his safety while simultaneously just bullying out Krakito. I mean, that is not looking fun to be a Hachiman.
It sometimes doesn't look fair to go up against Heimdallr. Like, if you can't match his pressure, it is just a painful matchup. But Varis, of course, like you said, hitting that level 5 to 6 mark is desperately, I think, trying to get the gold up for that Jotun's Wrath. Once you do have the Jotun's Wrath, you don't really mind if you connect with the purification beads from that Windfire Wheels, because at least you're going to get that cooldown back relatively soon. And again, triple mid-camp split there, all going the way of the Penguins. Right now, as much as the Penguins would like to be more on top if possible, I don't think they'll be too dissatisfied with how it's gone.
No, it's certainly not a terrible pace, and 500 gold is a paltry sum, but
this guy
would like to see someone punish Silence for this. He's been here the whole game.
Now, finally, Varis does make the rotation over, so that is a 3-man split on the purple buff, and Silence just going to let Echrome solo farm this their own purple buff as well. So, yeah, full commitment to this strategy, and it's almost surprising to see the, shall we say, more established team of the SCC team going for the, more strange play styles, but, I mean, right now it seems to be paying off.
Yeah, it hasn't exactly cost them anything, and looking across the board, taking itemization into account, I'm seeing a lot of scaling. Gauntlet of Thebes needs some stacks. Book of Thoth on both sides for both mid laners means they're probably going to be taking a slower pace through the early game. Devour's Gauntlets first slot for these hunters, so they're not exactly at full strength just yet either. I'm thinking for the next few minutes, we're probably just farming up, trying to confirm your own buffs. If your iSilenced, he's going to be invading because that's all he's done so far. But otherwise, I'm expecting, slow roll, slow and steady. Until eventually we start to reach a point where either Zyrhoes or DUNNN feels confident in their burst ability, and then we can start talking about those neutral objectives a little bit.
gentleman's agreement, it seems, between these two teams to make this a classic EU game. Really not helping the stereotype, especially noticing apreel on Mercury, just straight in for that rage. No messing about, no, trying to second guess for the Penguins or whether you're going to need a Spectral or not. No, apreel's going rage and he's going it early.
Yeah, want to get those stacks available as quickly as possible. Kills or assists will give him additional crit chance, which is all important. Put the fight on right. That's a lot of damage.
Oh, Varis gets caught and Varis gets eliminated. Apreel taking a ton of damage in response. Sega trading out 1 kill. Astyaniax and DUNNN show up. There's the whirlwind coming through. Beads forced from Sega to 1-for-1 so far. First blood does go the way of the Scarabs, but the Penguins at least answer it back.
Yeah, Penguins playing pretty far up on that right-hand side, but just slippery enough to drag apreel out of position. Apreel, though, of course, does get his assist, so 1 stack onto that rage means that much more damage for him in the next engagement. A 1-for-1 trade that doesn't exactly result in a whole lot, but it's the Solar Scarabs, I think, if you take into account map state, where they were taking that fight, where the waves were at the time, that come out slightly ahead in that exchange and pushes their gold lead pretty significantly.
Yeah, seeing Varis push that high up, you would expect to at least have seen the beads burn from Deathwalker, but no, this Hera, comfortable in the lane. It was just apreel at that moment that did use the purification bead. If Varis is aware of it, maybe could look to this Mercury as their first target to combine with DUNNN. But DUNNN wanted to take their time, of course, like you mentioned, stacking up that Book of Thoth, of course, combines well with a Kukulkan passive too, and has actually gone for the Conduit gem over the Sands of Time starters. Is this how you would have liked to see this Kukulkan played?
I really do just like Sands of Time. Just CDR is an all-important stat line for these mages. Conduit gem's going to help out in that if you're really playing for that one-shot style, I really need Varis to hit Windfire Wheels. I'm going to hit the Spear of the 9 Winds on anybody. Conduit Gem's going to boost your burst a little bit, and some of those upgraded starters also going to boost your burst. So I don't hate it, but when you take into account, alternate timelines, some of the buffs that items received recently, or even just how strong Pendulum is and how well it synergizes with Kukulkan, I think you're probably leaving some value on the table in the late game, but in exchange you're getting faster bursts throughout the mid game.
And backliners across the map rejoice as that blue spirit totem has finally spawned and will be available for everyone to pick up. I think that's one of those things that isn't really touched on too much is if you get that cooldown buff, oh, hold on, that's the final children already, just off of the hammer from Size. I don't think there was any kill potential there, but I think that was just a message sent by the Scarabs.
Yeah, heat check the damage. We didn't see Zero's full charge it, so certainly a little bit more damage to play with there, but I think you're right. DUNN's not exactly in a risky position, even gets to hold on to the beads, and a bit of kill pressure now lost in the mid lane for the Solar Scarabs. Apreel hasn't exactly been showing a propensity to go towards the mid lane. Seen a lot of side lane play from him, either in the duo now or what we saw previously in the solo as Echrome.
Oh, wow.
He likes his odds.
Krakito dashing straight into it. There's a 2-on-2 for the dual lane. All both sets of dual lane is scrapped. And there's the Dark Pills. Great grab, and apreel right on cue with the Sonic Boom. And out of danger goes Echrome. Varis comes in to try to clean up, but I'm not sure there's a really good target here. Special delivery comes through. Ring toss between two. Shreds all the protection. Fantastic leap, though, from Silence. Varis forced to use the ult defensively. Astyaniax as well has to get out of there. That's a kill for the Scarabs.
Beautiful leap from iSilenced to block out that sash. Thought for sure Varis was at least going to be able to grab the Mercury, maybe set up for a little bit more damage from the rest of his back line, but instead, well-placed leap puts him in the line of danger and makes sure that his jungler makes it out. So iSilenced not only been annoying on the camps, but now also annoying on the initiation too.
Well, speaking of initiation, here comes Argus right on top of Sega. Sega wants to battle this one out, though realizes Deathwalker is very fast stepped up, and the damage isn't great. However, apreel and Varis and Krakito and iSilenced all brawling on the left-hand side. Echrome up for pressure too. Finally, getting that purple buff is silenced, but Sega has one more shot, and Deathwalker will get the solo kill, but Varis shall also fall on the left-hand side. Penguins starting to bleed some kills everywhere.
Yeah, Solar Scarabs have really picked up the pace. It's around that level 9 mark. They finish up their first and second items, maybe a little bit of crit stacked up for apreel, and they have hit the gas everywhere. I thought we were going to be talking about objective play. I was imagining the Solar Scarabs pull the Gold Fury, try and force engagements there. Instead, it's anywhere they could find a fight, they've taken it, and they've won out on it pretty consistently. The Penguins only returning the 1 kill so far, and considering the guy with 1 kill is now 2 levels down just off the back of getting soloed by Deathwalker, happens to the best of us. Sold by Deathwalker. Certainly not a black mark on your history there, but tough stuff now for the Penguins, who need to right the ship quickly. I call that 5,000 gold mark the red flag. The big alarm bells start going off. This is when the game starts to slip out of control. And with objectives still on the map, and with so many towers still on the map for the Solar Scarabs to take, tier 1s especially, and even in mid, so easy to knock down, it's probably going to get a little bit worse before it starts to get better for the Penguins.
Exactly what caught my eye there. There's not a whole lot of gold on map for the Scarabs to take. You know, there's still 2 tier 1 towers up. The gold tier hasn't fallen yet, and probably will be quite soon. So the Penguins somewhat inexplicably so far down in gold. You really don't want to passively bleed this much of a lead, you know, to the other team. It's really not the way you want this game to go, especially because we haven't even seen Varis connect with the Windfire Wheels yet at all. Now, I agree with the build path, going for that Breastplate of Valor to get this ability off cooldown more often, but that's only useful if you're actually using the cooldown.
So needs to start putting it on to cooldown. So long as that diamond next to Varys' name is full, I'm not exactly a fan of the pacing from this Naja. So even just using it to 4 speeds, I think at this point, very valuable.
Yeah.
And it never feels great to utilize Windfire Wheels into CC immunity, but if Zyrhoes is allowed to free cast, and that's exactly what he's been doing for the last 14 minutes, hasn't even gone back to base since he's ticked over to 12, still sitting on that horn shard there. Someone's got to put those beads on cooldown. Someone's got to put Zyrhoes at risk of death, or threaten Deathwalker over the soul lane, or pull the beads off of Echrome, who is still playing one of the safest hunters in the game, so even just pulling the beads maybe not enough.
Yeah, right now Sega feeling the full brunt of the pressure on this right-hand side. Varis, though, shows up to Deathwalker, gets the ring toss with the help of Argus. Now, still trying to put some damage onto Deathwalker, but Deathwalker dishes it right back. Dynamic Pillars come down. Gold Fury's already gone down. Can they at least finish off Deathwalker in trade? It's all 4 members over here. Make that the kill that Sega was looking for. Trades out the Gold Fury for it, but at least the Penguins get back on the board.
We'll see. Can the Solar Scarabs get anything else? Apreel, free line on this tier 1. DUNNN nearby, but unless he's going to use Zephyron Archers, they'll be there to tank up. Apreel forced to use the beads, takes down the tower, and makes himself scarce. Solar Scarabs, they trade out Deathwalker. Had already gotten the Gold Fury, but pushed their lead even further in towards that tier 1 tower. The Penguins need to figure out how to find these kills a little bit faster. I understand that Naja and the nature of his kit kind of slows down some of these pick-based engagements. Sure, you got Deathwalker, but you had to take him into the sky first. They need to take him down much, much faster.
Need to take them down faster, but they can at least take down the Pyromancer instead. So while it is Echrome getting bullied out of the lane for a moment, at least an objective does go the way of the Penguins. But right now, the Pyromancer has only really got value through that Runic Bomb. That little bit of gold is nice, but it's not going to swing this game in your favor. It kind of comes down to what you can get off of this Runic Bomb, but the Scarabs don't need a Runic Bomb to take down a tier 2. They've already got one 15 minutes into the game.
Meanwhile, on right, tier 1 tower going down there as well. So long as it is an even numbers engagement, or even maybe just 1 to 2, the Solar Scarabs being the 1, I feel like they are favored in that fight. I mean, we saw it there. Yeah. Deathwalker nearly turns around the 4v1. Nobody's willing to rotate in towards Echrome and prevent him from pushing a tier 2 tower. Things are just not looking good over in the Penguins' booth. They got to figure out some sort of engagement. And I think a lot of the wind is taken from their sails by the Fafnir play that we saw early on. It was big rotations towards purple, big rotations towards green, just being threatening in mid, being annoying, and preventing the Penguins from feeling confident in their ability to either make rotations into the lane because they've been spotted out by iSilenced, or when they're there, lose their confidence in securing the kill because iSilenced is jumping in the way of sashes or ultimates or any bit of damage. So from there, we haven't really seen the Penguins since that 9-10 minute mark make any real proactive plays on map. It's been all Solar Scarabs focused. Even the 1 kill we saw into Deathwalker most recently is Deathwalker going for a solo kill in tower into a blue buff invade, and then he's eventually caught out around the Fire Giant pit. The Penguins have just not found any sort of footing past that halfway point of the map.
Yeah, I think you might be right about that early pressure from Silenced, because one thing that everyone has done plenty of is the early game start. Everyone knows how they want to start, everyone knows how they want to do it, but Echrome might not know what kind of danger they're in, goes into the Bifrost Crystal, but it doesn't get them to safety, it only gets them to more action. Varis trying to find the kill, can't get to because it gets sent through the realms. Now Krakito has committed to the fight, but can't find the kill either. Zyrhoes sweeps up everyone else. It looked good for the Penguins until it didn't.
Man, Echrome just stands his ground. Little surrender vote tossed up there by the Penguins, and can you blame him with Echrome dancing at 10% HP for the entirety of that fight? In the purple buff alone, buys enough time for the rest of his team to rotate through, and Zyrhoes just makes it look simple with a cleanup rotation. Dunn's gotta play careful here. Did he not see him?
Oh, didn't see him, but gets hit with everything, and just one tiny basic attack will be enough to finish off Dunn, and that means the Fire Giant will be available for the Solar Scarabs. Sega, the closest one on the scene. Can they even get there in time? Half HP. Here comes Argus. Everyone turning to deflect this Morgan Le Fay instead, and will have zero chance to manage to take that objective away. The Scarabs take a 17-minute Fire Giant, and might even just take another kill in the meantime as well.
They even got his beads. So Varis on respawn. Short respawn, level 13 by the way. Won't have beads for it, so likely won't be able to get too active on map. Or ult, exactly. So the Solar Scarabs now with Fire Giant on 5 and a good objective burning composition with the help of Fafnir, as well as Zyrhoes' wall on that Thoth. Could just knock down the tier 2 tower. Synced up timers means rotate over towards the Oni Fury, further line their coffers, and put this game into crazy odds now for the Penguins. It is no longer what is the Penguins' game plan, what can they do of their own volition. It's hoping for a mistake.
And there's a mistake from Krakito, gets caught, tries to stand their ground, Echrome style, it doesn't quite work, to a Mercury with Rage fully stacked, and the Deathbringer, and the Serrated Edge. Apreel fast tracking to late game, and already, we haven't even seen that much from this Mercury, quietly getting 3, 1, and 4 over here. And right now, like you said, it doesn't come down to what the Penguins can do, it's can they capitalize on a mistake from the Scarabs, but right now I don't see them making one.
No, the Scarabs have played a very smart game so far, choosing where they want to put that aggression, the invades to slow down the pace, and then immediately this transition in towards picks and objectives have put themselves in a very good position. The Penguins, though, do have some silver linings in the composition, namely that they've got a good defensive draft here. Kukulkan's really good at keeping those waves out of your Phoenix. Morgan Le Fay, being a standard mage, is going to be pretty decent on the poke department. And then if there is an all-in initiation from the Solar Scarab, space control from Dharmic Pillars, especially in the enclosed spaces around your Phoenixes, it is just going to be a significant stopper tool for them. So the Solar Scarabs, although they are in just incredibly favored odds in a really good position right now, still do need to show a little bit of respect once we start to approach the last line of defense before the Titan. Tier 2 tower, though, on the right side, yeah, just let that one go.
Yep, let that one go. Let the Solar Scarabs get set up, because right now, there is only one Runic Bomb in the pocket of the Scarabs, and no sign of any Titans marching down lanes either. And that is actually one of those saving graces for the Penguins. It is still very difficult to just march into a Phoenix and take it down. The Runic Bomb does help that, but only one can be counted away, especially if you can't tank this Phoenix for too long. But it's all about when the Solar Scarabs opt to make their step in. Instead, Silence just leaps on in. Spirit of the Nine Winds comes out early, only connecting with one. Echrome focuses their damage onto this Phoenix. It's already burned down. Varis goes in, has to Windfire wheels on out. And everything I was just talking about it being difficult to march in and take a Phoenix, completely thrown out the window.
Yeah, just did not see the proper response there from the Penguins. Notice that Zyrhoes' HP is full, and he's been doing exactly this to SagerL the whole time. Knocks him down through the wall. Snipe from downtown. And that's the first kill of the siege. The Solar Scarabs looking real confident. So long as Zyrhoes is allowed to free cast, I don't see any reason to stop pushing just about ever. Silence gets to hold on to his own ultimate. That's one of their major siege tools, goes unused. Just walks in, tanks up the structure, and says, look, man, I've got an Aegis built into my kit, but if nobody's hurting me, what's the point? Keeps it simple. And the Solar Scarabs knock down the least valuable Phoenix, but this early in the game, any Phoenix is a good one to take.
Any Phoenix pre or around the 20-minute mark is just alarm bells for the side it's against, right? Penguins right now, if they weren't in a bad spot, now it's a much worse spot. And I don't even know how you could possibly contest a Fire Giant coming up anytime soon. You have the Spirit of the Nine Winds from DUNN, but I mean, we saw the reaction to the Solar Scarabs. They don't need to commit to a Fire Giant at all. If it gets contested in any way, they can just match up and take a team fight. There is no way that the Penguins can sneak it away, try to take an engagement that might be favorable, because it really don't have a window for that opportunity. I just don't see how they can do this at this stage unless we see the Solar Scarabs really overstepping.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm in the Penguins booth right now, I think the call likely is, look, our Fire Giant 5-on-5 in neutral territory is just never going to work for us. Our base defense hasn't exactly worked out either, so you got to find some sort of middle ground. Okay, well, let's just send Varis behind them while they're doing Fire Giant and see if maybe he can get a miracle steal, or we'll send DUNNN to throw out the ultimate, but try not to get too close, and then immediately disengage. And if you grab the Fire Giant, you've essentially bought yourself a few more minutes. I like to equate Fire Giant to around 10,000 gold, so I think even in the situation where the Penguins do steal it, the Solar Scarabs likely would keep up their siege, but it'd be much better odds as opposed to otherwise. And if you throw one person towards the Fire Giant and they don't grab it and they survive, you still can try your defense. If they just die, it's still a 4v5, which I would argue pretty similar odds to the 5v5 on base defense. Those odds are bad, by the way, no matter what the circumstance is. Instead, the Penguins go for option number 4, which is, okay, we can split the map, try and collect a little bit of gold, knock down a tier 1, grab a gold Fury, maybe we can finish up some of these items. I mean, that 5th item, Power Spike, is generally pretty important. You can see Deathbringer now for Krakito, but if nobody's grouped up, the Solar Scarabs are just going to take it.
Oh, Deathwalker walks in. There's Argus already down on top of DUNNN. Krakito almost there with a nicely timed Aegis. Varis tries to show up. Sega forced into the ultimate as well. You can trade fire for gold and maybe a tower, but you can't also trade a Phoenix.
Yeah, we'll see if they trade a 3rd one here. The Penguins still have some of those key abilities. I'm keeping my eyes on Ganesha ultimate. That's gone unused so far. Would buy them some space. Also, Varis holding onto that Windfire wheels. Again, 24 minutes in, has anyone been taken to the sky yet? I'm not sure.
Deathwalker once.
Oh, there we go.
and that was it. I mean, at least once, right? Like, it's there. But yeah, if you're going to take an alt-bot style build, like you see all this cooldown protections coming up from Naja, you have to alt-bot. Even if it costs you your life, right? I mean, you're going to die 4 times anyway. Might as well make it 5, but take someone down with you. At this point, it is just a case of when the Scarabs want to step in, but they've got so much time to work with, especially with that right lane Phoenix under pressure, and the poke coming out from Zyrhoes. Nobody is safe on the map.
No, Zyrhoes just throwing his abilities out for fun at this point.
Just
that was a
fun,
fun ultimate. Doesn't connect. Not exactly a big deal considering his first ability is doing upwards of 70% of some of these squishier targets. Only hits the 1 shot there onto the tank, but he's burning nonetheless.
Oh man, Asti low. Asti falls down to Silenced, and now, hold on, Deathwalker does get taken down by Sega at least. Is this the engagement the Penguins are looking for? Sega giving chase. This Morgan Le Fay does some decent damage. Krakito all the way up on the map. Actually dashes into 3. No cares in the world, but maybe they should consider it a little bit more. Echrome just zoning away.
Oh no!
Everyone else on map, but up until the sonic boom comes in. You hear it, and then you're dead. That's a triple. That is the end of the game. The Solar Scarabs convincingly take game 1.
And I understand the idea there from the Penguins at the end. Okay, well, Zyrhoes is alone. We've never been able to jump on him. This is the first opportunity we have to kill this guy. Let's go as far into the back line as we can. Oh, no. The rest of them are hiding in the jungle. Oh, here comes apreel. Oh, no. Now the Mercury's got a perfect line to finish out this game with that phenomenal ultimate onto 2. Tough stuff there. I think the pace of this game lost for the Penguins very early on, and the Solar Scarabs, of course. Just the confident team. They're certainly the favorites in this matchup, and they prove it. It's a late-game composition that expedites pace just by skill expression. I mean, early objectives, early invades. It felt like late game came at 12 minutes for them.
Yeah, when you have that type of draft, we mentioned there's not a whole lot of setup. There's not a whole lot you can do as a team. It's more just, are you better than the opposition? And, I mean, with that draft, they showed it. But we'll have to see if they can pull that off again in game number 2. But first, we're going to head for a quick break.
That's right. You can go to youtube.com/SmitePro for interviews, team check-ins, tier lists, all sorts of content with the pros, behind-the-scenes games. I know for a while we had Meta Mondays going on as well. Of course, it's been a little bit since we've had them in the studio, so you can go catch up on all of that, figure out what they were building, what they were playing, see what your favorite teams are thinking. You can also go to youtube.com/SmiteVod, and that will let you watch any and every SPL or SCC set that you could think of that you might want to be able to jump into. Literally every season of SPL is on there. I find myself very often going back to look at old games just to figure out, oh, did this really happen then? Is like the information that I have written down true? And when did it break? Things like that. So make sure you're checking out Smite VOD and Smite Pro on YouTube for all of your Smite, I guess, Pro League needs. It's all Smite Pro needs. Yeah, all that stuff. All that fun stuff. It's Gore, it's Trelly. And Trelly, it's a Game 1 win for the Scarabs.
Yep.
And much like we saw in the first set of the day, this one, slower to start, right? Scarabs take a little bit to get the ball rolling, but once the ball's rolling, there was no stopping it.
Yeah, the farm game was top tier, as you might expect, but even when the farm game wasn't top tier, the kills were also coming through for the Solar Scarabs. It did seem like Zyrhoes and Apreel just had a field day getting the last hits, of course, but also being the big playmakers as well. That's what we expected from the Thoth, and that's what we expected from the Sonic Booms, things like that. Apreel just starting off with, you know, the early crit and just continuing as the game went on, just trying to stack it up as much as possible. Very scary stuff for the Penguins to try and come back from, because not only did they have, I'm not going to say almost no chance, but it was very difficult, right? They didn't have a horse in this race, essentially. They went for a little bit of a defense. They were able to, like, 3-man Deathwalker, but when you need such an overwhelming advantage to even get one pick, it becomes much more difficult as the game continues to fight back in and to keep your mental straight for the next game as well, which is exactly what they have to do here. Try and have a short memory and forget what just occurred.
Especially in moments like that. You know, we talk about it, especially when farm game comes into the conversation. Hitting late game in terms of itemization way before your opponents can is not only a huge boost, but then when you start to apply that to someone like a Mercury, who is a late game hyper carry, suddenly it can spiral out of control, and you can see that 14,000 damage, which maybe doesn't seem that much. In fact, you get 18, 17k from Deathwalker, Zero's Chrome or Echrome. But 6 kills, apreel, very present on the map and prevalent in the jungle. And you could really feel that, right? On the other side, unfortunately, like, Naja's just not the hyper carry a Mercury is, so you're already going into it at a disadvantage.
Right.
But then when the slash lines get that askew, it definitely causes some trouble. So, a good controlled win for the Scarabs here in Game 1. We'll see if they can continue that rate, or if the Penguins will stop them, create another bump, force them to go to Game 3. Of course, that we're going to have to see here. They will be taking the Penguins, that is, first pick. Anything picks and bans-wise that stands out to you as, like, that needs to change?
Well, I mean, considering that it didn't seem like the Scarabs had the end-all, be-all, you know, OP characters in any sort of role. Like, of course, the Thoth is going to behave well, but you can get to Thoth. Thoth can die. And I think that because of that, maybe the Penguins don't want to deal with it or pick it for themselves. They immediately ban the Thoth.
Yeah.
They disagree with me entirely. They're like, that Thoth can't die. We can't even get close to him, so let's remove him. Just grab the Poseidon instead. Still, a very prevalent mage that can flex between mid and solo, but usually has been going over towards solo. But less mobility. You know, you're not going to have the dashes across the map. You're not going to have the range. What you are going to have is incredible boxing potential and just objective burn / sometimes secure.
Well, I'm going to keep my eyes open, more so for anything. Banned this time around, but maybe one day we'll get a Mammon game somewhere in this championship. You had mentioned Poseidon immediately. I was thinking, you know, Raijin, Puch, Morgan Le Fay, they're all still available. They've all still been pretty high priority. Instead, the Scarabs go for Hachiman and the Baba Yaga. And responded is Khepri and Puch. So you get some of the top tier, most coveted mages for the Penguins. But you get the Scarabs on picks that feel comfortable, right? Outside of the Heimdallr, I feel like Hachi has definitely showcased in these 4 games so far a high priority. And I see Daji, and she feasts on mages.
Yeah, she definitely does, especially ones like Puch and Poseidon that don't have that CC immunity baked into the kit. Of course, the Penguins have hedged their bets with the Khepri, just to have that extra cleanse with Scarab's Blessing. Still, though, your beats are going to be very important, which, you know, it's tough to say Poseidon and Puch can hold on to them up into a composition like this, where Daji, but also Hera, can pull those beats pretty easily. Rounding out the draft with the Kama and the Anhur, so to me it looks pretty dive heavy, but you also have the Khepri, right? So if your team goes a little bit too far, that Scarab's Blessing might just give you that second life.
Fafnir rounds things out. And this has been a really interesting, I think, adjustment, really looking at things lately, because, like, Fafnir, you know, we talk about him a lot. Single target CC, he's really good with auto attackers. And, like, Daji and Hachi fall into that, but, like, you still got 2 mages. Like, right now it feels like you're a little more limited in what a Fafnir can truly provide to the team, but do you feel like it hurts the Scarabs that much to not have somebody with maybe bigger amounts of CC?
No, I mean, you got the 2 mages, as you said, and that's just the big AoE damage, right?
Yeah.
As long as you've got that, I think a pick-based composition can still work if that's the case with the Fafnir hammers are just locked down. But more often than not, you're using Draconic Transformation just to burn an objective, right? You're not necessarily just CCing one guy. That can happen. There is still the Daji that can follow up on it, but I'm thinking burning objectives is the main goal here.
Well, it's going to be fun to watch. Scarabs last time around, farm game was the big threat. We'll see if the Penguins can answer, and to do that, we'll jump down to the casters.
All right, so it looks like, yet again, the Solar Scarabs just looking to steamroll down the Penguins. No interest in any sort of combined composition where, you know, something like we saw game number 1 from the Penguins, where it's that Kukulkan plus Naja combination. the Scarabs just want to play, and they just want to kill the enemy team.
Yeah, I tend to agree. The casters, I mean, they bring up a great point, which is this is a composition, again, from the Solar Scarabs that is capable of dealing with these neutral objectives, but I saw an unwillingness in the previous game where they maybe could have gone towards those objectives a bit earlier, instead decided to prioritize some of those engagements. And considering iSilenced is playing the exact same way he did previously, I'm imagining we see more of the same there. Nearly able to steal that one away, but clean play from Krakito to push him away means that Silence is going to have to give up on that one, but I'm sure he's got a little bit more to say about this purple buff.
Yeah, round 2. Let's just do it all over again. Horrific comes out again. Look how much time this is taking for the Penguins. This has got to be extremely frustrating to go against, and might be able to get it off, but no, cannot steal away the buff itself with the underhanded tactics, and there's just nothing the Penguins can do about it. Can they even turn this? It looks like they're going to try. Damage from Krakito is good, but this is exactly what iSilenced is looking for, and the Penguins have to give it up.
Penguins lost out on 2 minions on wave there, which not insane, but still certainly threatening. Good knockback from Krakito. If Impale doesn't connect exactly when it does, that's either his life or his beads, and I'm thinking, considering how quickly that damage had come out, likely his life. Already level 3 is Echrome, and Krakito's still working on that level 2.
You know, if you're Echrome right now and you have Silence playing this type of support, this is like a dream for any hunter. You get all the farm you want, you do a ton of damage, and I guess this is just punishment on the Penguins for picking these low-pressure dual lanes, but, I mean, obviously they didn't see this coming. They couldn't prepare for it, but, man, I've never seen a one pick from the Fafnir do so well. You know, Varis blinking onto Deathwalker. There's the beads already. The damage is good. SagerL with the shot does not find it. Gets the Whirlpool, but the shield will immune it. That's already some aggression on one side. On the left-hand side, the War Flag comes down onto 2. It's just not happening for the Penguins just yet.
No, but I'd imagine we see Krakito be able to turn things around a bit in lane once we take over to level 5. That's when Anhur really starts to pick up some of that massive kill pressure thanks to his ultimate. Over in the soul lane, I mean, decent rotation for the Penguins. Does buy them some pressure. Deathwalker loses his beads, so now with SagerL on the brink of 5, certainly poses a threat in lane there. Could potentially try and turn things around. Khepri nearly loses his life. Looked to me like he was just trying to escape and unfortunately accidentally finds that pool. Regardless, still does find his way out of there.
Silence there. Takes away the big camp. Still only level 2, but all of his farm has been from the opposition. So I think you're still happy enough with that. Echrome, of course, almost ticking over to level 5 soon, surely. And at that point then, this Hachiman's just safe to be left alone. It's going to be very tough for anyone on the side of the Penguins to really lock them down. Now, again, Silenced contesting this green buff and somehow gets it. I think that was Zyrhoes there with the assistance. And I can't think of anything more tilting than what Silence is doing. I'd be so mad at watching this.
No, it has got to be one of the most frustrating things on the planet. Because when you're thinking about it, if you try and justify it in your mind, it's, well, he's still level 2, you know, he's being annoying, but he's not exactly farming.
Man,
and then
look at this.
You look at the map, you realize your speed buff's under threat. Where's the jungler? Varis currently over towards red. He might be able to make... Oh, he's going back to base. It's going to take a while, but I think Silence might have it. Nope, he's giving up. 700
I mean,
HP.
that is, yeah, 700 HP, which, you know, if I'm getting my calculations right, that's about a year worth of damage from Fafnir. There's the ultimates being traded on the solo lane. SagerL manages to get out alive, and will be happy enough, of course, has not yet gone back to base. So, you know, maybe we'll decide this will be the time to back and finish off that Pythagoras piece, but quiet in the solo lane. Not seeing any rotation again coming through from Varis, despite Deathwalker's beads being down.
Yeah, but Camazotz isn't exactly the most CC-heavy god. Neither is Poseidon, so even with Deathwalker's beads off, it's not as if they've got a guaranteed win, whereas should SagerL lose his beads, Apreel could just go like this.
Apreel goes for it. There's the burn damage. There's the tick damage. That is all you need. SagerL gets punished, but Echrome equally punished by Varis. This was the healthy and happy Hachiman, but certainly not that anymore.
Yeah, that is such a massive pick for the Penguins, legitimately. Considering Echrome was so far ahead at this point and Silence has sacrificed so much of his own farm to put Echrome in that position, having the kill go over to Varis, having a kill just happen in general to equalize some of the farm between Krakito and Echrome will do a whole lot for the Penguins to right the ship over in the duo lane. Anhur, of course, one of the most highly valued hunters in the game right now, doesn't necessarily fall off all that hard towards the late game, but certainly still is one of those early, mid-game slanted, just hyper-aggressive hunters. You want him in a position where he can leverage that.
And this is where Apreel will shine on this Daji. It does all of the damage they need, and Puch in the mid lane cannot deal with the damage output. It almost seems simple from Apreel picking Daji into this double mage setup, but why haven't we been seeing this before, and why is it working now?
I mean, Daji's always been in an interesting position in that sometimes she's exactly what compositions need. She's at the top of the meta because her burst is exactly good enough, or there's just enough lack of CC immunity that Palau is going to find the value. I think for Apreel in particular, it's just a pick that he's very comfortable on. Certainly one he's played a whole lot in his stint in the SCC. Does have good burst, and does have some decent matchups into some of these picks throughout the mid game. Late's going to be tougher.
Ooh, cracking off the mark, but Argus is not, and there comes the Palau chains. Now the damage turns on to Varis, who does get pulled in, and the polymorph. Perfectly timed. That's 2 kills in the soul lane, and all of a sudden, any advantage that the Penguins might have had there wiped away.
And Apreel's already got a good enough amount of CDR in build that he could just roll through and do it to Sager again, considering Sager has lost those beads. Palau essentially a guaranteed kill with the burst potential and chain CC potential that Deathwalker's got over in that soul lane. Polymorph, one of the most slept on abilities in the game, as far as I'm concerned. It is just so incredibly difficult to deal with. And I'm sure Sager will be running into that. Was having a hard enough time in the 1v1. And with no beads and a target on his back, I don't think it's going to be a 1v1 much longer. I'm keeping my eyes on Apreel's ultimate timer. When it's full, I'm expecting to see him in the solo.
Yeah, expecting right back on over there because Krakito can deal with it quite well. Has the Purification beads up, of course, and has the Desert Fury CC immunity. So Apreel's just decided, all right, not interested. Not going over there. Echrome can handle it. Has had, you know, a decent start, of course. Maybe actually falling a little bit behind is Echrome. But as we discussed, this is the time where Anhur really shines, whereas late game, maybe that's more where Hachiman would be looking at. So not too surprising to see it go this way. It depends on how it can transition from this stage. Now, Silence goes in, does not steal the camp, does hit a hammer. Doesn't get any more, though, and that is that for this dual lane skirmish.
Yeah, not much more to be had over on that left-hand side of the map. I think now the fight transitions closer towards mid, and I didn't even realize Apreel was 3 levels up on Varis. This Camazotz, it's an incredibly strong pick, but it's volatile in that because Camazotz has no utility in kit, it's a lot of dive potential, and it's all damage. Every single one of his abilities is about that damage. When you fall behind like this and you're not threatening enough, you don't threaten the 1v1, you don't exactly have the damage to keep up with maybe some of these other picks, things start to look really dire. Whereas other picks, like Daji, for example, a level 5 Daji at the 50-minute mark still has Palau, still has that utility. Camazotz doesn't bring anything like that.
Oh, Sager in more trouble yet again, dishing out decent damage and
far
gets the Scarabs blessing a mile away out into safety. And that's the Palau used as well. So finally, Astyaniax able to make use of that. Oh, Zyrhoes already used the blast off, has to use the home sweet home for some more safety. But Varis wants in. Varis goes in, swoops once, swoops twice, takes down Zyrhoes. Maybe Silence in some trouble. Apreel trying to get the blue buff, will get it. Varis still on the hunt, though.
I don't know that Varis has got enough damage now. Meanwhile, on left, Krakito taken out by Echrome. Varis into the tower, says, I'm not worth a lot. I'll try and make something happen. Unfortunately for him, surrounded. And even with Khepri nearby, not exactly a help without the Scarab's blessing. And Varis, off the back of what was a pretty decent pick, resets his bounty and then gives it over to the Solar Scarabs to put themselves right in the back in a dominant position. I mean, gold is starting to balloon. It's not as bad as it was in Game 1, but things are starting to look a bit dire. Echrome not exactly advantaged in the 1v1 up against Krakito, especially with itemization as it was. I believe Krakito sitting on a little bit more power in build as well as in kit, just having some of that penetration by nature of Anhur. Should probably have not fallen down there, but Echrome, dude's a wizard. He just makes it work.
I do wonder if that solo kill on the left-hand side actually convinced Varis to go for that extra kill on the right-hand side. It was quite unnecessary, you know. Once we see that Apreel's made it into tower, blue buff is down, there is really not a lot on the table other than the kill. And of course, it is decent shutdown gold on Apreel, but it really wasn't worth that commitment because all it does is stall the momentum, I feel like. And now it feels again like the Penguins are on the back foot, and even Astyaniax taking a ton of poke and can do nothing about it to punish.
I mean, the Penguins still do have opportunities, so long as they can prevent the neutral objectives from desyncing. If the Penguins can keep Gold Fury on the map, prevent the Solar Scarabs from knocking that down before the Pyromancer spawns up, their composition is actually very good at dealing with objectives themselves. Varis attempting his absolute best to dive out here, but never will have enough damage. Fortunately, Scarabs' Blessing able to return him to safety, but that is a heavy commitment, costing Zyrhoes his ultimate in exchange for Camazotz and Khepri ultimate. Not exactly a value trade, but as I was saying, so long as the Penguins can keep Gold Fury on the map until Pyromancer spawns up, their ability to just do the other one while the Solar Scarabs take their pick is actually pretty high. So yeah, I think that is number one on the priority list, is just slow down the pace of the game, prevent that neutral from going down, and buy a little bit of time.
And I do worry about Varis maybe trying a bit too hard to force things happening. Now, Varis, almost spotted out there by Apreel, just in the nick of time, gets away. Deathwalker wants to give chase, wants to dive on in. There will be Argus tanking up the tower shots. Oh, Deathwalker now taking the damage. Pushing it right back is Sega. Deathwalker low, doesn't connect. With that, hands crashing together. Sega trying to give chase. What is the cooldown like? Has the tide, and there it shall go. That'll be a solo kill from Sega, matching it up against Deathwalker.
Meanwhile, on left, it's now Khepri on the chopping block. Apreel, considering engaging, instead says, look, farm's probably worth a little bit more, and considering 12 to 8, not exactly going to find value off of that pick. A kill on a Krakito, though, would go a long way, and the Solar Scarabs keeping up their pressure.
Double root comes out from Astyaniax. Zyrhoes is on the scene, though, and Astyaniax is feeling the brunt. That silence will lock down this Khepri, and apreel just dives on forward even further. Now goes up into the parallel. Varis here as well. Silence here to provide support and to tank the tower. Echrome finds the final shot. Varis wants to go for the kill. You don't have the damage, buddy. We'll just have to back in on themselves. DUNNN now in some trouble. Silence over the wall. Doesn't connect the hammer. Apreel just about lives as well. Hold on. Crips come out. Oh, Echrome finds the shot despite all the damage coming back. And that will be multiple kills on the left-hand side for the Scarabs.
My heart goes out to DUNNN. You just see all that damage. You're playing in your own wave. You're thinking, no way, Echrome's that guy. He's not going to most wanted me. And, these bullets don't curve. It's going to be just fine. Incorrect. Echrome always finds those auto attacks. Has been one of the most consistent hunters out of Europe and proves it once more. Stands his ground in the emptied crypts, takes down his kill, and then immediately walks himself out of there. The Solar Scarabs, essentially, as far as I'm concerned, can do no wrong now. The only thing they could do that is improper is to stop playing. So long as they are doing something on the map, hitting any sort of minion or enemy god or neutral objective, I think they've done the right thing. So it's now on the Penguins to find something they can rely on. And I think this is a good idea. Move the fight over to the right-hand side and play around your lead.
Oh, Deathwalker dishing out the damage back onto Varis. There's the Whirlpool. That's going to be pretty good. The damage is great, and that will be enough. Deathwalker falling down for a second time on this right-hand side. This is the only saving grace so far that the Penguins have, and they need to make the most use of it.
Yeah, they've done a very good job of playing on that right-hand side now. Sager nursing about a 2-level lead, but then you realize it's a tale of two games. It's a small lead for the Penguins on right, and a massive, massive lead on the left for the Solar Scarabs. Echrome sitting at 12 of Krakito. I'm thinking that's a pretty good position to be in for the Hachiman. And it is the side of the map with the more valuable of the two feasible neutral objectives. Gold Fury certainly on the chopping block soon. But with Pyromancer back up, the Penguins have done exactly what I asked of them, which was slow down the game, make sure both neutrals aren't down at the same time. Now they have the opportunity to trade them out should the Solar Scarabs decide to pull one.
Yeah, window on the right-hand side for the Penguins to at least keep that gold ticking over, even if they are going to be behind. Right now, a 4K gold lead is pretty big for the Scarabs, but if it stays this way for another 10 minutes, the Penguins would be quite happy. They're actually pulling this Pyromancer first. Now, Silence is the only one here. Will try to steal. It's going to attempt it, but Kraken actually secures an objective, and that means the Penguins get the first objective of the game.
Been watching him playing Smite for nearly a decade now, and you'd be surprised how often Kraken doesn't exactly work out for that objective secure. So well played again to Sager. Just single-handedly keeping his team afloat right now, and that's exactly what we were calling for just a moment ago. Objectives are traded out across the map, so our Scarabs weren't there in numbers to defend Pyromancer. Instead, it was apreel actually deep in the enemy jungle on the left-hand side. Creates some space, scouts things out, and realizes, okay, Gold Fury's an easy grab. Get that notification that Pyro's gone down, and you know for a fact that there's at least a couple members on the right-hand side. And so the Solar Scarabs will grab the more valuable of the two neutral objectives, but still, I think even better than the Penguins could have asked for. If the Solar Scarabs are playing just a little bit more heads up on where the Penguins are, likely would have been able to prevent that Pyromancer and get the Gold Fury for themselves. So good stuff to the Penguins, creating decent wins, small wins in these dire situations. Need to find some of that farm on key targets, though. I'm keeping my eyes on Khepri, needs that second relic. Really important that he picks that one up soon. Also, keep my eyes on Varis, because that level lead for Apreel is still developing. It's been around that 1 to 2 mark. We're approaching 3 now, as we just see Varis tick over to 13.
Oh,
He's
man.
in some trouble.
Varis in trouble, but as is Apreel, actually. Not quite as clear cut as it might seem. Kraken does come out onto Deathwalker, and Varis wants to go back in again, but no better to hell. And Apreel just rips his health bar through, and Apreel goes back in. Does get abducted, though. Cannot get into that parallel. So that's a big shutdown. All of the gold in the game for the Penguins on the back of SagerL right now. This Poseidon is the big match player right now. And if the Penguins are going to have any more success, it's got to come through them.
Has to, but SagerL now hit by the Polymorph. Deathwalker nearby, but so behind. Can't imagine he's got too much more in the tank to force out that fight. You know, there's something to this Varis guy. I'm kind of a fan now. His willingness to just go in, this devil-may-care attitude. I'm about it. He's willing to trade his life.
SMITE also willing to trade life, dives in the way of Deathwalker. SagerL now more than happy to trade blows. Deathwalker is dealing almost negative damage onto SagerL. Kraken comes out again, as does Argus. The shield just in time. Astyaniax diving deep, gets the abduct. The whirlpool damage not quite enough, but here is DUNNN on the backside. Gets Deathwalker down. Big gold swing onto the Upwash, who desperately needed it. Right side tier 1 tower as well. The Penguins fighting right back into this game, but Apreel back on scene, has to retreat. Varis looping around. This fight keeps going.
Yeah, SagerL's resustaining quickly on wave, has now met up with Apreel. Pretty far forward on this Poseidon. He's taking a lot of damage.
SagerL is just brawling their way through this fight. Apreel gives up the chase. Fantastic Scarabs blessing right on cue, but it still hits the Palau, and Apreel shall take them down. But here comes the backup squad. Varis comes in. Silence goes down. Echrome completely cut off and isolated, but manages to somehow trade one off. Blow for blow across the map. Penguins quite happy with how this goes, though.
Man, the Penguins, it's just this willingness to scrap even when the odds aren't looking perfect. It's a 2v2 on right initially where they lose out, respawn, and go immediately back to the scene of the crime, and leads us exactly to where we are. Love what I've seen from SagerL. He's realized perfectly that he is the win condition now for his team fight.
Yep.
If the Penguins need anything, it's him to have a good engagement. We're seeing Khepri playing to protect the king style. Varis has legitimately given up any form of self-preservation just to create even more space for this Poseidon. Even Krakito, to a certain extent, leaping in, getting aggressive, meeting up with them. The Penguins are playing a hyper-aggressive style, and I just have to imagine it's catching the Solar Scarabs off guard. Traditional SMITE knowledge would dictate the team that's behind isn't going to be walking into my tower. They're not going to be diving my tier 2. They're not invading my blue buff, but that's exactly what the Penguins have done. And they've cut that gold lead that the Solar Scarabs had established pretty significantly. This is a much better pace here in Game 2. Adaptations from the Penguins seems to have been, we're just not going to respect our enemies anymore. I mean, there's really no reason. If we expect the Solar Scarabs to play perfectly and we give them all that respect, they won't even have to do it. It would have already happened just by rolling over. Instead, the Penguins are heat checking everywhere.
Heat checking right onto the Fire Giant. Now, Deathwalker is here, drops Argus early, which means Krakito has to bail from the fight, but the damage is good. SagerL on this Poseidon dishes out massive damage to the Fire Giant. Zyrhoes in trouble at the top side of the map as well, and Varis solos them down. The Penguins get the Fire Giant and allow looking to keep fighting. DUNNN again. Astyaniax with a fantastic revive. Apreel ticks down from the Palau. Does manage to trade one in response, but Echrome now way on the wrong side of the map. Astyaniax has to retreat with the abduct. Might get locked down, but there's Varis. There comes a fantastic Kraken, but fantastic Aegis as well. Varis swinging out all the damage. Echrome, we know, will stand their ground, but shall have no more ground to last on. Krakito back on scene, leaping into the fight. Silence locked down. Deathwalker shut down as well. A deicide for the Penguins, taking a lead from the SOC.
The Penguins, they've got something else to show us here. That is hyper-aggressive play once more. Are you ready to defend the Fire Giant? The Solar Scarabs will say, no, not exactly. I was not expecting that. Lose out on the objective. Zero sold out by Varis, who, again, he's like a zombie, man. He's just walking them down, zero regard. Just only one thing on his mind, and it's dealing player damage, and he's done a great job of it. Finds Zeros, separates the fight, and the Penguins from there keep things nice. It is worth noting that Echrome is criminally unlucky in that entire engagement. I don't believe finds a single crit. Doesn't have the most crit chance, but 1 or 2 would have been nice for him. Maybe would have found a kill in return. Instead, it's the Penguins who come out on top, and for the first time this set, put themselves in the driver's seat.
Way in the driver's seat, and SEGA right now feels like they can take on the world. It seems 1v2 against Apreel and Zyrhoes, and actually does not care. Is more than happy to take that type of engagement. Despite the way that the game has gone, it's still quite risky, but no, more than happy. And the rest of the team now starting to play their part. We mentioned everything was going through SEGA. That's where the success was. But SEGA has created so much space that, you know, the dual lane of the Penguins is feeling happy. Varis actually getting his solo kill onto Zyrhoes, like you mentioned. We didn't see that coming 10 minutes ago. Right now, the solo Scarabs, if they didn't have a bloody nose before, you know, I'm starting to feel like that nose might be broken.
Yeah, the Scarabs now need to figure out a response to the Penguins' playstyle. It's the Penguins who get to make the active decisions on map. Solar Scarabs do have opportunity. Just go ahead and play defensive around those tier 2 towers, and I think certainly have the capacity to keep their towers healthy. 2 mages means that your ability to keep those waves out is pretty consistent. They're not the best poke mages, but decent enough between Hera and Baba Yaga that they should be able to hold their own. And looking at the siege potential of the Penguins, I think it's a PvP siege. Some teams are just, let me get into the tower, I'll create some space, I'll knock it down. This is a team composition, I think, from the Penguins that is likely to look a little bit more so for picks, even inside of these objectives. So the ability to either grab somebody with Abduct or just utilize Kraken for the stun, pretty significant here. We'll see. Grouping on the left, Solar Scarabs, they're here in numbers, and it's Varis maybe last to the engagement.
Scarabs actually want to defend this tier 2. Somewhat ill-advised these days, not something you see often, but Varis all the way around the backside now might find themselves in some trouble. Ooh, that's a good polymorph. Combine that with the Argus coming through, but there's the Scarabs Blessing already down. A lot expended from the Penguins, and that will actually dissuade them from pushing. The Scarabs stand strong at the tier 2.
Yeah, Varis steps on a ward, I believe, just gets immediately picked out afterward. Does have the benefit of being Camazotz, that get-out-of-jail-free card that is bad out of hell, as well as the Scarabs Blessing. Just double defense there for the Penguins.
Get out of prison free, man.
Yeah, he's got zero repercussions for his actions there. Solar Scarabs, though, are able to defend their tier 2, but if they stuck around too long...
Yeah, 2 members of the Scarabs all the way on left lane. Luckily, one of them has a horse, and the other one has wings if he chooses to use them. Shall transform into that Draconic Confirmation. Oh my god, the CC lockdown. Absolutely phenomenal. Now this left side tier 2 completely undefended from the Solar Scarabs. It will be all 5 members of the Penguins. There's a split push going on in the mid lane tier 1 and the right lane tier 2, but looks like that's the go button for the Penguins. They're pushing in to this Phoenix. Zyrhoes dishing out a little bit of damage. Sega steps forward as well. This Phoenix not taking a ton of damage yet. No minions to work with. Apreel goes in, gets the parallel. Sega uses the beads early. Hosting home is good. There's 2 sets of beads comes out as well. Finally defended from the Solar Scarabs. It was looking dicey for a moment, though.
It was. Runic Bomb, I believe, dropped on that Phoenix, but backdoor protections were engaged, and so the Solar Scarabs don't even lose out on that much HP on their objective. Penguins, with Sager at the front of the fight, weren't quite able to keep up their siege. Sager, of course, starting that one off at about 1/3 HP, likely unable to stay in there for too long. Was probably hoping for a wave to spawn up soon so they could resustain, but was not given that opportunity. The Solar Scarabs on fast reset, able to get there and defend. Speaking of fast resets, Solar Scarabs right on top of that timer.
They have the Frenzy, they have the Fafnir, they have everything they need to get it quickly. It is just Varis here. Can they get in? There's the Battle of Hell, goes for the
no
gets it! Varis swoops in, steals it away like a cat burglar, right back out of there. The Solar Scarabs thought they had the window. Varis shuts it closed.
249 damage from Bat Out of Hell, secures the objective. I mean, first off, absolutely insane that he's got the heads-up play to go for that. That is crazy low odds for the Camazotz. But also, crazy that the Solar Scarabs couldn't find some sort of secure. I mean, Zyrhoes, just about every single one of his abilities out-damages that. Deathwalker as well. Even Echrome with Heavenly Banner or Lucky Crit would have been out-secure just in raw damage numbers. So unfortunate for the Solar Scarabs. You get a bit unlucky there. It was a really smart play to just be on top of that Fire Giant
no.
immediately.
From in some trouble. There's a Purification Beast early. Does have commanded archery at least, so can drive on away. But that does expose this tier 2 tower on the right-hand side. Scarabs Blessing actually used there onto DUNNN. Looks like they caught themselves in a little bit of danger on that right-hand side. But still, it looks like the Solar Scarabs willing to defend their tier 2 towers.
I mean, the Penguins haven't shown an ability to siege in 5-on-5 just yet. They're really struggling, the Penguins that is, on initiation. I mean, you can have Khepri go for the abduct every single time, but in a true 5-on-5, the Solar Scarabs will have 5 people, or 4 rather, dealing damage to the Khepri in that situation. Yep. DUNN's got CC, but it's conditional. Krakito needs to put himself in ideal positions to find impale stuns. As far as initiation is concerned, the Penguins really struggling. So I think what we saw on left, where the Penguins knocked down the tier 2, essentially gifted by the Solar Scarabs, losing the grouping, and then getting picked out in a 4v2 situation. I just don't see that same level of ease for the Penguins should the Solar Scarabs show respect and play inside of their own tower.
Looks like the Penguins are going to use their Titan. You know, if the 5 of you can't do it, just call member number 6 and see if they can help burst down this tier 2 tower. Now, you can use this Titan as a pseudo-initiation, right? That is a thing that the Scarabs have to deal with. So it looks like that will be the cue for the Penguins to step on up. Sega making their way in. Decent damage onto a silence, but just creating the space. Look at this. The Titan actually hasn't even reached the tower yet, and that has been the cue. So it all depends on if the Penguins will follow him in.
Yeah, they gotta knock down that Titan at least a little bit before it gets into the Phoenix. Has entered range, down to half. The Penguins starting to move themselves forward.
Oh, the Runic Bomb goes in, but doesn't go off. Apreel on the left-hand side almost falls down to Varis. Now, the home sweet home, pretty good for defense, but Varis up into the sky. Where does Apreel go? And to the ground is where Varis shall send them. Now, this right side Phoenix still under siege, but the mid lane, the minions have pushed up. Deathwalker has to defend it. Right side minions walking in. Astyaniax goes first. Silence trying to defend. Zyrhoes takes a chunk of damage. Meanwhile, mid lane Phoenix has been abandoned. Argus comes out.
Real low.
Silence gets low. Deathwalker steps up high. Varis trying to find the damage. Krakito gets the first kill. There's the Desert Fury as well, and this Phoenix will be falling soon.
Now Zyrhoes and Silence forced to retreat. Right side Phoenix dead in all but name. Now, as well in name too. The Penguins knock down the right and keep up their pressure in mid. Varis had done so much to Apreel just previously. We didn't get to see him in the team fight because he had taken his 1v1. Now, can get involved.
Ooh. Trying to go in again for this second objective before the respawns come through. Astyaniax takes a ton of damage, but is still alive. Now this mid lane Phoenix, too hard of a nut to crack for the Penguins, but they've already taken such a huge victory.
And their lead is so significant now. I mean, true 6 items slotted just for about everybody, I think, on this back, considering Golden Hand, maybe some Potions of Power to play with. 4,400 for Varis. That is ridiculous. Excuse me. Down a bit now, as he has made his way back. The Solar Scarabs, I mean, they're not so far behind in itemization. We're still looking at 6 item slots. Echrome finished up his Deathbringer, so a little bit more threatening for him. Waiting on a little bit of lifesteal for Apreel. Deathwalker still has his recipe, so we'll get a little bit stronger, has instead upgraded that starter. So Solar Scarabs not terribly far behind in efficacy and team fight, thanks to stats, but the Penguins have just done so much. And I think Vision economy is going to start coming into play. Solar Scarabs showing a lot of respect in Vision, have decided that they're not going to play defensively. They're not too concerned about the 11,000 some odd gold, call it 12, in favor of the Penguins. Instead, with all those wards in pocket, that kind of indicates to me that the Solar Scarabs are willing to take this fight around the Fire Giant in neutral territory. And it won't be impossible for them to simultaneously defend their base. Right side Phoenix, of course, one of the lowest value, means that you can push out those waves and simultaneously show presence in the Fire Giant pit. And Varis having lost that ultimate, a pretty significant loss for the Penguins. They've been playing very much so around the pressure that Varis has established by taking 1v1s up against either Zyrhoes or Apreel. You're not exactly as confident in your ability to take that 1v1 and win, or take that 1v1 and make it out alive without Bat Out of Hell.
Well, now, we've seen this type of engagement before. The Solar Scarabs have been down, and they are currently down 14,000 gold. However, this Fire Giant is about to tick over to Enhanced, and it will be enhanced by the time it is killed off for sure. So the Solar Scarabs opting to make this their last stand. And you know, we've seen it work from here. All it takes is one big fight at this stage, and this will be the end of the game. But Can the Penguins play this cool? This is where the sort of veteran experience of an SCC team like the Solar Scarabs tends to pay on out. Well, let's see how the Penguins tend to handle it.
I like what we're seeing, though. Varis keeping pressure on map, forcing someone to rotate through. It's Deathwalker who makes that rotation. He's important for the team fight in that he's going to bring an unofficial 6-man with Argus, as well as he's one of the CC core of the Solar Scarabs. So Varis just distracting him, finding a little bit of value here.
Up there was Zyrhoes, gets locked in by a pillar. Don't believe they had to burn any of their relics yet, though. Varis still playing pest on this left-hand side. Looks like they will sweep in for this Phoenix. Doesn't actually have the runic bomb that lies on the back of SagerL. Has to back away as Echrome has made the rotation. But look at the poke that DUNNN is able to dish out. Zyrhoes gets caught, has to use the home sweet home. It's all about what resources you have in the pocket. Apreel now has already used that Trickster Spirit, might be in some danger, does have the movement speed required, but this has opened the window for Varis. Look at the bat lurking in the mid lane, leaping forward, going to go for this objective. Right side Phoenix is about to respawn, and the fight's surely brewing.
Varis has made his way into the Phoenix, down to 0.5%. Silence forward, has to make something happen instead. Turned onto.
Oh, Varis takes the fight with apreel. Still has the bat out of hell. Go up into the pound now. Goes apreel. Can they have the shot? Nice blink coming out from Varis, but the fight has been won on the right-hand side. The mid lane Phoenix is down, and now this Fire Giant, now enhanced, by the way, going to try to go the way of the Penguins. Can Echrome get a steal? No, they cannot. EFG to the Penguins.
Penguins starting to move themselves forward. Krakito's got good chase potential. No leap, but if you can connect Sand onto Echrome or Zyrhoes, make it easier for the rest of his team to close that gap. Sand, no good, but SagerL, he's fast and he's on the chase.
Varis desperately barreling forward. Silence still down. Very, very low amount of front line. Oh, Astyaniax taking a ton of damage of themselves. Varis just walking up to Deathwalker. Right side Phoenix just walked at by the Penguins. This is not quite a 99%er yet, but the Penguins have done everything right so far.
Penguins, just about only one structure between them and the exposed Titan now, the Solar Scarabs. Their damage output has been ridiculous, and one of the primary strengths of the Penguins' composition is that opwash and his ability to make it impossible to defend your Titan. Emptying the crypts in the Titan room, it might as well be GG for the most part. You don't want to stand in it. It's simultaneously burning you and the objective that defines whether or not one team wins or loses. And so the Penguins' win condition is get into the Titan room with DUNNN maintaining his ultimate. And that's easier said than done. You're really going to need some sort of peel. We've seen Khepri, for the most part, focusing Varis, and I don't imagine that changes anytime soon, but having Opwash have that extra line of safety, especially the damage output that we had seen in that last engagement, just so important. Solar Scarabs, on the other hand, their game plan is clear. Someone's got to deal with SagerL, someone's got to deal with DUNNN. And that someone really is just apreel, as far as I'm concerned. He's the only one that's got ease of closing gap. Haven't exactly seen the most damage output from Zyrhoes just yet. He's been having a hard time leveraging some of those frontline stats too. Prophetic Cloak's upgraded, but he's not exactly seeming all that tanky. And then Deathwalker on this Hera has a really good first 5 minutes, and then since then has significantly fallen off in his effectiveness in some of these engagements. If Deathwalker can just find a polymorph onto a key target, utilize it from range to start burning some of those beads, it would make it that much easier for apreel to go for that Pal-Lao pull. But as of now, it's apreel burning the beads and then waiting a few minutes to try and do it again.
Only fire minion waves going down the mid lane and the right-hand side. Now, the mid lane fire minion waves will actually hit first. So it all depends on how the Scabs are able to defend it. Now, apreel way off to the right-hand side and will be on the map, so the Penguins are aware of this. It all depends on if they will opt to just go in on that another fire minion. Fire-only waves hit this mid lane, although they will just walk through to the Titan. Now, Astyaniax walks in first. There comes the first runic bomb. Actually misses the Phoenix, but it doesn't matter. Crypts get emptied as well for that extra security. Now, the rest of the Penguins stepping on forward. The Solar Scarabs looking to defend all the way back home, but instead, the Penguins just hit the go button, go all in and onto the Titan. The Penguins take the Solar Scarabs down. Absolutely massive scalp for the SOC team.
Man, and this Penguins win almost reminds me of the OGJ Dragons. Oh, we're behind, but it just doesn't matter if I'm going to play aggressive. If you're not ready to match my play style, and the Penguins bring that exactly. I believe it is about a 4,000 gold lead favoring the Solar Scarabs at around that 10-minute mark, and the Penguins say, okay, we'll take a fight on blue buff. and they lose it, and they lose it handily, and they say, well, okay, what if I go back to your blue buff? And then everything turns on its head as they start to establish their own pace.
Pace was established, and that pace is that we're going to a third game, so we'll have to see exactly who will come out on top just after this short break.
You off my mind. I can see the signs, gone and got it on the side. Thought you were being sly, thought I'd never catch you line. Trying to keep it in, I can see it in your eyes. Go with doing the you, still pretending that look cool. Something on your cheek, then that's strange, it's true. Trying to be a man, trying to be a man tonight. I'm afraid I can't tonight. I can't let you go. I'm scared of none above, but you feel. A little bit too much for me. Can't shake the thought you touch and feel. Know what I wish that I would see when I close my eyes. I close my eyes, thinking like I was naive, thinking that we could be the lead, and know that I would ever see when I close my eyes. I close my eyes. I'm scared of none above. You feel alive. I'll give you on, 'cause you make me feel alive. Holding on
Welcome back, everyone, as it's tied 1-1, Shelly. You know, things, at least as far as I saw in terms of like polls, skew heavily in favor of the Scarabs. People believe in them. And those people were proven wrong right here, right now. Again, you know, we've talked about it a little bit, but the SOC came out to play. It did not look great for them for a pretty hefty portion of the game. But eventually, Trelly, they start to pull ahead. It was a lot scrappier, and when they find that lead, it takes a little bit, but they still get there.
I think that's the key, the scrapping, and that's sort of where the Penguins were able to find, you know, that comeback and also that lead for themselves after a while because, you know, as Mifflin highlighted, it was a lot of trying to camp Deathwalker. We saw it in game number 1. They're like, we got to throw 3 people over to solo lane. This time around, they tried it again, and it didn't always work out, but once they were able to get the solo kill Sager, this was a kill that I expected Deathwalker to get onto Sager underneath that tower, but Argus could not finish the job. Sager comes back, pushes a wave under, shows up the blue buff, and then continuous blue buff pressure. This Hera got a lot of pressure towards solo lane, and that means that Sager gets to get ahead. Varis had a fantastic game on this Camazotz. I mean, just threatening everyone across the map, essentially. Anytime Varis caught someone in the jungle or towards a Phoenix or just anywhere, was doing consistent amounts of damage. Bad out of hell, Scarabs blessing to get out of trouble. I was very impressed with the jungle performance here from Varis. I think that was another good reason that the Penguins were able to pull ahead and then eventually win this game too.
And honestly, you know, we got to see it there. This is going to sound, first off, they were down 4,000 gold, then went up, what, like 13,000. So the Penguins with a remarkable turnaround in that regard. But I also had to give credit where credit's due. It seems like a small thing, but a lot of Krakens that are connecting. And we have seen Poseidons in high-level, I'm talking worlds-level games, where things have looked great for him. He's had a massive lead, and then you miss 1 or 2 Krakens in a row, and then suddenly the game falls apart. So having that pressure, like you said, great presence in the jungle, great presence all around. The Anhur as well, I think had a good performance. Earns him a win. Ties this set up and goes to show exactly why. First off, why the double elim portion of this tournament is going to be very helpful, but also that everyone here is here to play and here to scrap for a good reason. That reason is to get to Worlds. Still a couple sets before we can start having any conversation like that, right? They got to make it out of this group into the next group and then out of that group as well. So it is not going to be easy. And of course, it starts here in game number 3. Picks and bans. Scarabs will be the first pick. So the Penguins are going to have to adapt a little bit towards that. Last time around, Charlie, like, they got a pretty mean combo early on. I mean, the Poseidon was super, super early. They got the Opwash as well in their top 3. It feels like the Scarabs swapping over and immediately banning that Poseidon kind of recognize, all right, maybe we goofed up a little bit in our picks and bans.
It seems like both teams are making some adaptations, right? The Penguins say, we're not seeing that Thoth again. The Scarabs say, we're not seeing either the Poseidon or the Outwatch. We don't want to deal with that. And in this case, the Mammon still. I like that. Going to be a pretty highly contested ban. And that does leave the Chernobog open. This global presence, this ADC that can just fly to anyone whenever that ultimate is available. And of course, the split push factor. Just locking that in first here for the Solar Scarabs opens up so many doors for your late game. It's very annoying to try and match. So I'd like to see how the Penguins are going to try and combat that.
I'm really interested in the Hachi pickup. I feel like we've been seeing a lot of teams. First off, Cherno, again, has just been prominent. But after Cherno, it feels like that, like, okay, who's second? It has been like a honestly impossible to lock down conversation. I feel like for some players, Anhur has been really high on that list here, at least so far today in Europe. Hachi's been high on that list. So we'll see how that goes. Hercules as well. Not something we get to see too often in this day and age, where Hercules is locked in alongside a Sobek, having one, you know, presumably, of course, Sobek as a support. Hercules, we've seen go to the jungle sometimes lately, more than we've seen in solo lane. But I'm thinking of, I believe, Jess Baskin specifically, who has absolutely rocked the world with this Hercules. So if it plays well, the Penguins could have something great going for them.
They definitely could. I'm going to wait to see, you know, the rest of the draft. But they've got the double pluck, so a lot of CC, a lot of beads burn on the side of the Penguins, whereas on the Scarab, sure, you've got Raijin, who's going to create like a terrible amount of CC to try and deal with, but it's really just Khepri at this moment, so not so much locked in for the Solar Scarabs just yet. Kuku's not going to bring it either, but the Thor that's being hovered, that Anvil of Dawn can create a lot of space, can create a lot of openings, and set up for the Solar Scarabs, and they will lock it in. So semi-global presence, global presence, good burst, and of course that Khepri, which is going to be very annoying to try and deal with, as we saw last game for the Penguins. I like the comp here for the Solar Scarabs.
It's definitely going up against something that I'm admiring from the Penguins, but like you said, at least in this day and age, when it comes to the metas, it does feel like the Scarabs kind of have things on lock. I mean, you've got Raijin, who's one of the top in his role, Chernobog, who is the top in his role.
Oh, yeah.
And it feels like, and you had mentioned it earlier today, but that Kukulkan is like, he's just been hovering. He's just under the skin of some of the other mid laners.
Yep.
And I expect a lot of bursts there. Thor for the setup, Khepri for the setup. I agree with you. The Scarabs get away with a whole lot. But you have a Susano, like the Scylla for the burst. You had mentioned the CC from the Hercules, Sobek. Where do the Penguins try to find their success in the game?
Well, it's difficult because the Scylla is not going to come out of the gate swinging. You know, you need some time, which of course the Cuckoo does as well, but I think it's easier to hit, right? You can sort of just send out Spirit of the Nine Winds, whereas Scylla really does rely a lot on getting the resets from I'm a Monster, so relying on setup from the team, relying on that CC is going to be a big deal. The Penguins really would like to get to late game, but you know, if Thor's got anything to say about it, he's going to try and shut that down.
Well, the Penguins tied us up 1-1. The only way to settle this set is to take it down to one more game and to jump over to our casters.
All right, one more game it is for the first SOC team to take a possible win away from an SCC team. We've seen it happen before, but very rare that it happens in this very first round. But looking at the composition from the Penguins, Biff, what I am seeing is displacement, displacement, displacement. Absolutely going to be tossing around the Solar Scarabs at every opportunity. And it looks like finally, Silence not picking something up that they feel like they can invade with. Instead, just going to have a normal start to the game.
Yeah, I mean, Khepri doesn't exactly have the same level of threat, and well, I don't think would have been worth his time to step up and just walk into a green buff again. So a standard start, the Solar Scarabs not going to be playing too crazy here, whereas the Penguins certainly have got a lot of potential to make things happen. I'm keeping my eyes, in particular, on apreel out of the jungle. This Thor pick has just really served him well. Similarly, I think Varis has the potential to run the game like we had seen in Game 2, but Susano takes a little bit more time to line that up.
Yeah, Susano maybe takes some more time. It does at least have that utility that we mentioned previously. Varis maybe would struggle with if they fell behind. Actually seemed to do better from behind on that Camazotz, so maybe that's something we don't need to pay so much attention to. But Varis, of course, able to provide so much potential with this pull-in, as we see there, and with a knock-up from Typhoon as well, can be massively impactful in these team fights if the Solar Scarabs aren't too careful. But for the time being, I do expect to see, similar to Game 1, a lot of waiting around for this sort of level 5 tick-up.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not seeing too much potential for absolute early game picks unless we see something crazy out of the Soul Lane, right? If SagerL delivers them to the tower, I mean, that's one way to get things started. Otherwise, maybe it's apreel who strikes first. If he's got his wall, I mean, he can lock down the whole lane.
And there's the abduct. Astyaniax, of course, no leap to speak of, just one dash.
Well, he might be out.
Just to get it. Might actually be out. Echrome turns attention to Krakito. There's the blink out from the support. Not something we see too often, but it paid off that time. Varis makes their way to the right lane, but pays for their crimes. And we'll have to just back on away.
Man, what year is it that I'm looking at a blink first relic Sobek? It has been a very, very long time. Sacrificing a lot of team fight utility to go for that hyper-aggressive movement utility. But still certainly threatening. Varis, he's in
Varis.
trouble.
Oh, yet again, someone might get away. No, the Archers clean that one up, and that is the first blood for the third game in a row, going the way of the Solar Scarabs. It looked dicey there for Zyrhoes, but a fantastic wall coming out from apreel just saves their life a little bit there.
Yeah, that utility from Thor, again, just so detrimental. And looking at the Penguins' composition here, I'm not seeing great answers to Thor wall. You've got Sentinel from Scylla, and that's it. Otherwise, you are essentially just stuck. Until we see something like a Phantom Shell. And if you're picking up Phantom Shell for Thor Wall, that doesn't exactly feel great, so maybe the best answer for the Penguins is just a good offense themselves. If they're the ones starting up the engagements, won't be that big of a deal. That said, one of the weaknesses we had seen from the Solar Scarabs was their ability to answer the Penguins' aggression. A lot of the time they just weren't in position for it. Not exactly going to be an issue when you have a get-out-of-jail-free card in Scarab's Blessing, as well as global presence from both your jungler and ADC. Feels like you're just always going to have the numbers advantage on the side of the Scarabs.
Yeah, it feels like the Scarabs, despite playing game 1 and game 2 in a style that, was just a case of we will be better than you and we will beat you in team fights. Instead, they're starting opting for a more macro-style composition, right? Something that's obviously not always talked about, but having this potential rotation of, well, Echrome on the Chernobog, of course, but also apreel on the Thor to maybe counteract any potential split pushes coming out from the Penguins, too. It is a way that they can then use their experience and their knowledge of the game a bit better than just scrapping non-stop. But scrapping non-stop is what Silenced is liable to do, as we've seen so far. Scrapping over the shield buff, but it does go the way of the Scarabs.
Varis is nearby, and Silenced, playing alone here, could find himself in a bit of trouble. Now privy to the rotation from Varis, will be forced to use those beads defensively. Did not want to get tossed back to 2. And so, Silenced without the relic, but the Penguins find a small win in of itself. I mean, even just getting the ultimate off of Echrome, pretty decent in its own regard, but beads as well off of Silence means that there is now kill pressure on the left-hand side.
Yeah, and you don't really want to be using that Living Nightmare at this stage if you are Echrome, because ideally you'd save that for when those Devourer's Gauntlets, you can actually finish them and then get back to lane and start stacking that up, because at some point you're going to have to back again, unfortunately, to finish that item off. But might not suffer too greatly from it, of course, if the supports decide to rotate to the mid lane, as I expect Astyaniax especially to do. I think this Kukulkan extremely susceptible to the charge prey from Astyaniax, and that's, I think, why the blink has come through. Might also just be to combine with the amount of distance you can possibly throw a character if all of the Penguins get in on the act. But Deathwalker steps up to invade, finds himself 1v2, and has to use the taiko drums already.
Yeah, clean usage of that ultimate, though. That pull connects. Deathwalker would have been in no man's land without leap. Instead, leaps in again. Pull no good. Deathwalker, he's got happy feet.
Apreel up into the sky. Beats come out from Deathwalker. Varis, though, locked in place. Oh, Varis dashes in, goes for it, doesn't get it, and neither shall lSagerl. 2 kills in the solo lane for the Solar Scarabs. No longer messing around.
I'm the biggest Varis fan on the planet, man. I love this guy. It's just into the tower every single time. Does not care. Who doesn't care what point in the game it is. Doesn't care what the gold looks like. Who he's diving. Doesn't seem to matter to this guy. If it's good or bad, all bygones, man. We don't care about any of that. It's just, I need to be in that tower. And Varis has actioned that game plan every single time. Every team needs a guy like that. Just willing to make things happen. Sometimes it's maybe good, sometimes maybe not.
Yeah, you always need someone on the team with a little bit of crazy. And
X Factor.
Exactly, X Factor. Some people like to put it in the ADC role, actually. If you've got a guy who likes to just dive in, sometimes that could be impactful. Looks like the Penguins have got it instead through their jungler. And I mean, it worked out game 1. I'm not sure it was ever going to work out diving that tier 1 before 5 minutes here, but, you like you said, you can't hate the just out-and-out aggression coming out from Varis.
Yeah, very much so willing to get his hands dirty. Similarly on left, it's Echrome. Looking for a 1v1 up against Krakito in minion wave, and has one out on that trade too. So clean stuff there, leveraging a bit of that pressure. Echrome's had the better end of this matchup just about every single game so far this set. Krakito struggling to keep some of those minion waves out of tower, which is why we see these massive rotations once more. Varis on left, Sobek on left as well. We saw DUNNN consider a rotation, but with Echrome backing up, the rest of the team starts to back out as well.
They're really struggling on this right-hand side to contend with this Raijin. Astyaniax and Krakito, but here comes apreel right onto the head of this Hachiman, who does manage to get away for a moment and gets through the wall. Not able to lock them down, but Varis finds a good angle, but gets the Scarab's blessing instead from Silence. Apreel teleports back in. Nice dodge on the abduct. Gets rooted in place, and Zyrhoes with the Zephyr shall sweep up the kill way off the mark with the Spirit of the Nine Winds, but it does not matter, because the mid-lane rotation has paid off.
I think Zyrhoes was assuming that Sobek was without dash. lSagerl off the mark with pull. Is there enough damage to kill him? I'm not sure.
Literally no damage was done with the taiko drums. But it did bring lSagerl back into range for that Raiju to tick them down. The Solar Scarabs absolutely coming out to play now.
But this is what we saw in game 2 as well. The Solar Scarabs off to a fast start. I believe it was a 4-1 slash line at around this point in game 2, and then it was when the Penguins really decided, okay, well, we're behind, so anything we do is just going to be fun. And that caught the Solar Scarabs off guard. We'll see if the Penguins try and go for that same style of play. I'm just not certain that their composition, namely Susano, I'm not sure that Susano is capable of leveraging the same level of aggression.
Varis might actually be caught. Needs to turn that aggression into some defensive movements and will manage to dash on away. Deathwalker right now, level 10 on the map. You'd think that's particularly high when you compare it to the Penguins, but 2 other members of the Solar Scarabs also at this level 10 mark. Right now they're establishing a very good early lead.
They are, all off the back of individual play. Deathwalker and lSagerl, that's been a true 1v1 so far. Haven't seen too many rotations over towards that soul lane. In the dual lane, Echrome's shoving waves in the tower. Deathwalker could be in some trouble here. Punch is coming up.
Good damage. Oh, dashes them all the way in, goes for the excavate, but Varis shall not be deterred by any sort of structure. Will get the kill, and Silence not in range for that Scarab Blessing. Means that Varis will get the kill, but it's actually going to take some time to get out here. Silence not giving this one up.
I don't know. Gets into the tower just as the wave makes its way through, but damage left behind. Sick. Is there any globals up? Echrome?
Oh, Silence has shot it. Silence is going for it. Silence wants it, not going to be able to find it, and will get out safely, does Varis. Apreel off the mark with absolutely everything, but at least can try to invade the purple. Nope, never mind, Astyaniax is there. And here we go, see, this is the momentum that the Penguins needed. Just that small win on one side of the map, and, you know, it's turned into a small win on the other side of the map as well.
Yeah, the Penguins certainly a team that plays through momentum. When things go well, they go real well. When they go poor, they go real poor. And so far, the Penguins trying their best to right the ship, as things have gone exceedingly well for the Solar Scarabs. Deathwalker's lead was approaching 3 levels just previously, having fallen down now to the rotation from Varis. Has cut that lead significantly. Still got to think there was an opportunity for Echrome to just ult over, but instead, Echrome more concerned with his own 1v1.
Wants to take it yet again. Like you said, winning this battle throughout the set so far is Echrome over Krakito. But it's not always about that when it comes to the dual lane, if you can keep your farm efficiently enough. But I'm wondering, in the soul lane, it's been a while since we've seen warriors in the meta. Of course, and this Hercules now being picked up by lSagerl, coming under a ton of pressure, make no mistake about it, from Deathwalker. But is there a point in the game where Hercules actually becomes a bit more impactful than this Raijin, as some more action across the map, but it's all just poking and prodding as Deathwalker safe to push up on right?
If I'm to believe the rhetoric from every single pro player on the planet right now, and I generally do, warrior solos just aren't it right now. So if there was a point in the game where it would go well, it would have been early, but clearly Deathwalker had taken that. I don't think it gets much better anytime soon.
Oh man, action popping off. Here comes the Cyclone, goes the wrong direction, and Deathwalker shall spray down Varis with the help of Silenced. In the meanwhile, Apreel takes down Krakito on the left-hand side too. Deathwalker just having the freedom of the right-hand side despite falling down to Varis.
Yeah, he's just had such a good time of that lane so far. 11 minutes, maybe 10 seconds of fumble. As Zyrhoes uses his own Aegis there. Didn't trust the ultimate from Silence, so lose out on the Relic as well as the Scarab's Blessing, but, you know, using both and not needing it better than not using either and needing at least one. So Zyrhoes makes his way out, DUNNN loses out on his own ultimate, and now opportunities on both sides. Aegis off of both mid laners, 1 minute left on DUNN's. 2 on Zyrhoes means that junglers likely will try to get involved towards the center of the map. More likely, I think, that we see Varis make that rotation. Susano not as reliant on his CC to find kills, whereas Apreel, it's the standard age-old Thor combo. You need the multi-stuns, the double taps, things along those lines to secure that 1v1.
Well, we're seeing this 5k lead develop now for the Solar Scarabs. This is the alarm bells moment you were talking about in game number 1. And I don't know, do the Penguins have what they need to come into it at the moment? DUNNN finding a big burst of damage from Apreel, but Varis might want to go for it and very uncharacteristically backs away. But smart decision, because there is a lot of damage on the side of the Scarabs. They want this beacon. They are not going to give it up. But do the Penguins have what they need to turn this one around similarly to how they did in game number 2?
There are certainly opportunities, right? It's impossible to predict play on field, exactly where that aggression is going to happen. I like the composition from the Penguins. It is a little bit more late game slanted than previously. Feels like DUNNN in particular on this Scylla going to be a little while till we have the one-shot potential that we associate with that character. Krakito is a major part of the DPS for this team and hasn't been allowed to rotate out of lane because Echrome is just absolutely dominating the long lane. So opportunities, sure, for the Penguins, but a little bit further off. Whereas beforehand, it was 15 minutes. They're hitting W key all the way across the map. I think it's going to take a little bit more time here for the Penguins. And if the Solar Scarabs keep up their own pace, the further the Scarabs push the lead in their favor, the more they push out that clock from the Penguins. If no more gold lead is established, I'd say the Penguins could probably start fighting back in about 10 minutes. If the Solar Scarabs add a few more thousand gold, that continues to add minutes to that clock.
Well, Deathwalker finally gets hit by a push-pull combo and will not commit to this blue buff. But surprisingly so, the Solar Scarab's not opting for the gold queue until right now, right on cue, just before that Pyromancer due to spawn as well. Like you mentioned earlier, want to desync these objectives. Astyaniax here, we've seen a steal from Sobek before, but cannot contend with the Spirit of the Nine Winds, and that's the big objective that the Solar Scarabs were really hunting for.
And now Pyromancer on the map, and the Penguins not given the opportunity to take it. Means the Solar Scarabs can just play defensively around the Pyromancer, prevent the Penguins from knocking it down, wait for those cooldowns, namely Spirit of the Nine Winds, then pull it, or go ahead and force another fight. I think the Solar Scarabs far enough ahead now and have enough global presence on map that they can go ahead and just force the engagement, even lacking a bit of those resources. No beads for DUNNN means that if apreel can make contact, even just wall hammer is going to do upwards of 50%. So it's unlikely we see Scylla step up. Zyrhoes has got decent objective burn potential with tornadoes, and even with just Zephyr should be able to secure the objective given the opportunity. But instead, it's a reset to neutral. The Solar Scarabs, a distinctly European team, like to make sure they've got everything before they get over-aggressive.
No. Well, speaking of over-aggressive, Deathwalker there dashes in, and there was a lot of people on the way. They set that up to the Penguins from quite some distance. DUNNN and Varis make the rotation over, punish this Raijin yet again, and again, it seems like the only saving grace for the Penguins is always through this solo lane, but this time, Hercules surely going to struggle to have the same impact that Poseidon did.
Yeah, Hercules will still have that displacement factor, will be a little bit tankier than Poseidon, has much more survivability thanks to mitigate wounds, but not as much damage, and not nearly as threatening on his own. Needs to have a team behind him, needs to get some of those levels rolling too, and even with Deathwalker falling down, it still is 2 levels in favor of Deathwalker. Deathwalker may be the most North American soul laner in Europe, loves to get aggressive, does so once again. I don't want to see the Solar Scarabs slow up their pace, though, and I like what we're seeing on map. Just go ahead, group up on the Pyromancer. It's either a heat check or you force a fight. And even with lSagerl nearby, looking at his build, lSagerl's not tanky just yet.
No, only has a little bit of magic defense, of course, to contend with Deathwalker on the Raijin. I mean, it might work a bit against Zyrhoes, but apreel, of course, being in physical guard, will have the more consistent damage output, and I do think it would be a difficult task for lSagerl to really dissuade the Solar Scarabs from any of these objectives. But I think the Penguins will be happy to at least keep the Pyromancer alive, you know, almost playing as a pseudo-support for that Pyro. They can't take it themselves, so they are just going to need to rely on that objective staying on the map to not spool this gold lead too far up. Now we're seeing Varis yet again make a rotation over, but Deathwalker learns their lesson, and this time does not dash on top of lSagerl.
Yeah, Deathwalker has been loving that 1v1 and has padded his damage exceedingly well. Soul Laner's fake damage, of course, what that is.
Absolutely.
Especially
oh my goodness.
Fake damage. Egregiously fake damage there, considering lSagerl has only fallen the twice. Look at that mitigation. Yeah, I mean, that is top to bottom what a warrior versus mage matchup looks like. I think if you start to take into account, and we don't have access to this stat, but how much gold lSagerl has lost to tower, I think probably makes up a good portion of the gold lead already established by Deathwalker, sitting at around 10,000 some odd gold, nearly 2,000 up on lSagerl. Pyromancer, certainly the target here. Solar Scarabs first on the scene, and it's going quick.
It's going too fast for anyone to contend with. 4 members, rotation there will seal the deal. DUNNN was aware that it was going on, but I'm a Monster does not go that far. So that's the objective that, again, the Scarabs are looking for. Have desynced it now from the Gold Fury, which will be spawning relatively soon, as does this Stygian Beacon too. It's just tough for the Penguins now looking to commit onto Deathwalker with the Taiko drums, but the fear is pretty good. Fantastic timing on the knockup, but the beads and the thunder crash is enough to get Deathwalker to safety, and it's now just not going so well for the Penguins on this right-hand side.
Does cost Varis his beads as well as his blink, so A little bit more difficult now for Susano to get into the back line of the Solar Scarabs. Deathwalker would have been a great target to knock down, but makes himself scarce. Great usage of CC immunity, gets to hold on to the shell too.
Apreel goes up. They're looking to take simultaneously this beacon, and the Gold Fury does not connect with the ult. Instead, looks like a commitment onto Zyrhoes, but Apreel is still here. It does a lot of damage to DUNNN. Almost a full health bar, but not quite enough. It's into the wall, has to use the purification beads. Beacon's still standing. Deathwalker, though, making the rotation over as well. Tectonic Rift is good, but Silenced is the only member standing on the point. The Living Nightmare is enough to dissuade any more aggression from the Penguins, and the Solar Scarabs get this 4th objective off the map.
Stygian Beacon will go their way as well. Tier 1 tower, and all of a sudden the Solar Scarabs push their lead, even failing to find a few of those kills. lSagerl seems to be playing with a bit more confidence, though, doesn't he? Has been walking relatively aggressively on map, continually trying to put some damage into Deathwalker. And this is the point of the game now that he's upgraded that Breastplate of Valor, where he can start leveraging some of those tankier stats. Still certainly doesn't match poke potential with Raijin, but throw the healing into it, and all of a sudden lSagerl, not the most threatening, but certainly very annoying and has great displacement, like we talked about a little bit earlier on. So I'll be keeping my eyes on this Hercules. If he can jump onto Echrome or keep Zyrhoes out of these fights, buy space for the rest of his team, I would say he'd done his job very, very well. Otherwise, Varis really needs to start stepping up on the Susano. Haven't seen him make contact with priority target in a good while now. Echrome's been free farming in the dual lane, has hit level 20, upgraded his starter item, has a full item lead on top of that over Krakito. Someone's going to have to address that before it becomes a map-wide issue.
lSagerl and Deathwalker, the only action on map at the moment, because the distraction is here for the Fire Giant to be pulled by the Solar Scarabs. Now, Astyaniax is aware, DUNNN aware of it also. Apreel goes up into the sky. There's the Spirit of the Nine Winds, and the Solar Scarabs do manage to secure the objective. DUNNN cannot go anywhere because the hammer over the wall. Now, Astyaniax blocked on the dash coming out from Silence. There's a huge objective now. The final one ticked off the list by the Solar Scarabs, and now they're just looking to take down these towers.
Great play from the Scarabs. Send Apreel up to the air. Hope nobody's in range. Let's go ahead and confirm the objective. Zyrhoes there with Spirit of the Nine Winds does exactly that, and Apreel finds the kill onto DUNNN through the CC immunity of I'm a Monster. Doesn't matter if you're CC immune. When you fire off that ability, it makes you stationary and makes it simple for Apreel to do all that damage. Not only is it Fire Giant, not only is it Tier 1, add a Tier 2, and likely Krakito as well.
Krakito absolutely nowhere to go. And Apreel just trying to play body blocker and will get the rampage as well on this Thor. Fantastic impact so far, and this is sort of what we mentioned earlier. The macro potential for this Solar Scarabs draft is just phenomenal. Didn't manage to save the tower on left, but Echrome being able to take a Fire Giant, take a mid lane, Tier 1 and Tier 2, and then immediately set up the kill onto Krakito. That's exactly what this draft from the Scarabs was looking to do.
Yeah, generally we see these dual lane globals, be it Chernobog or Athena. Those are the primary suspects. It's usually soul lane ganks throughout the early game. Instead, we've seen Echrome just all in on the 1v1 up against Krakito. I mean, every single one of his ultimates, every single one of his backs has just seen him jumping into the shadow of Krakito, force him back to base, and continually pushed his lead. And reflected still in the levels. Krakito unable to tick over to level 20. As lSagerl takes a lot of damage here and is knocked down by Zyrhoes. Wow. That guy hits hard.
That Zephyr absolutely nailing the rest of the health bar for lSagerl. I thought they might have been out, but never mind. That would be one of the massive frontliners down. Now it looks like the Solar Scarabs want to continue this push a little bit earlier than usual, but Frenzy is part. Runic Bomb comes down to nothing at all the Penguins can do. How often is it that the right side Phoenix is the first one to go down in every game? But anyway, Varis is here to defend this mid lane on their own. Split pushing on the left-hand side was done and has paid the price for it. 2 Phoenixes down in one fell swoop.
And the Furies spawned up, so the Solar Scarabs opportunity to either go knock down the Tier 2 on left or collect the Fury, head back to base, steal away all that stimulus gold, and then just set themselves up for a final push into the Penguins. And looking at itemization for the Penguins, it is not pretty. Spectral Armor now for Sobek, going to help out with some of those crits. So Echrome on the precipice of a Deathbringer will not have the full fun of it, especially considering in these true 5-on-5 engagements, Spectral now being an aura. Will make it even more difficult for Echrome to have too much fun with that additional crit damage. but otherwise, we're still waiting on 6th item slot. DUNNN still doesn't have his starter item upgraded. Varis still at level 19. lSagerl a ways off 20 as well. The Penguins need to buy a lot of time until they're at a state of parity where they can fight in equally. Until then, it's the Solar Scarabs game, and they can do just about no wrong as far as I'm concerned. Ability to just poke in towards these objectives, incredibly high. The only thing that could have made it more miserable is if Zyrhoes had elected to pick up Polynomicon. Would have made it even more simple.
Oh man, lSagerl gets a massive heal from the mitigate wounds, but does not have any sort of impact. Again, Deathwalker diving
Can't
forward,
help himself.
gets punished for it, and now it's going to be a lot of damage actually from the Phoenix. Varis all the way on the right-hand side, and 2 kills go down in an instant. DUNNN can't find the kill because Deathwalker gets revived by Silenced. All of the Phoenix is down. Fire minion Oni waves coming down the mid lane. Silence just gonna tank it up. Frenzy comes out. DUNNN doing whatever they can, but it's not gonna be enough. Varis gets a good Typhoon, but this Titan burns so far down. Apreel finally gets shut down, but what did it cost? It cost the set for the Penguins. Solar Scarabs take it down 2-1.
I mean, the Penguins make a great argument for the SOC. I mean, that game 2, just a great narrative there. Behind early, fight themselves back in through overwhelming aggression. They just could not quite find that spark that worked for them in game 2 here in game number 3. The composition did not play well into that aggressive style, although we saw the similar levels of willingness to camp out the solo lane. Deathwalker had 2 people in his lane more often than not, still wasn't quite seeing that same level of success in aggression. And so the Solar Scarabs, being the veteran team, played through that macro game, and they looked great for it.
Well, it was a fantastic set. Like you said, fantastic advertisement for the EU SOC. But let's see how it's broken down as we head back to the desk.
That's right, the Penguins were able to push us to 3, but the Scarabs close it out in 3. Stumble there in game 2, but game 3, Trelly, it is much a return to form. There we go. I was trying to put them together. Perform. Return to form for them. Where they just finally get everything to click and take siege.
Yeah, that's what I expected to see from game number 2, but, as the caster said, the Penguins really did bring it. They showed, being able to not only shut down a lane, but how to get a lead, how to come back, which is something that you gotta know. If you want to make it all the way over towards Worlds, you gotta know about having to be able to come back from behind, because you can't expect to just diff every team in your way, right? There's gonna be some stumbles, and in this case, there were some stumbles from the Solar Scarabs, but it was just the execution of their dive. Zyrhoes on this Kukulkan provided so much DPS, whether it to an objective or whether it was to the Titan there at the end. When you're trying to end the game, post or pre-25 minutes, you need a ton of damage, and that's exactly what the Cuckoo could provide. Apreel, of course, on this Thor was just on a warpath, going back and forth between lanes, setting up beautifully for the team. And then Echrome said, you know what, I didn't get very involved this game, but when I get level 20, when I become that late game ADC, I can just use that Nightmare ultimate to get all the way across the map whenever I need, and that's exactly what happened.
And really, you get to see, I think, first off, excellent walls and control. We were talking a lot about, hey, Hercules, Sobek, there's going to be a lot of good CC from the Penguins. They just didn't really get the opportunity to utilize it, at least not together, because of the damage output that was pouring out of the Scarabs. But also, you'll see it, a lot of assists there, 5 assists for Apreel. And if it wasn't directly leading to a kill for Apreel, as we saw in a lot of these highlights, there were tons of walls there that were just phenomenal to lock him into damage, whether it was for the Kukulkan or for the Raijin. So things just seemed to line up for him. Trelly, they give him a very hard fight. The Scarabs are still the ones that end up moving forward. Again, though, it's double elimination, which means that the Penguins are not going to be eliminated here. It just means that they are on their last legs. Again, 8 teams, 2 groups right now that are going to be feeding into one. You want to be the top 2 in your group. And for the Penguins, 1 loss is 1 step further from being able to qualify for Group C. In fact, you can see the visual representation of Group B here. A little bit later today, the last set, Wargs and Titans, is what we're going to be jumping into. The winner of that will play the Scarabs, and winner of that one will go to Group C. Loser will play the Penguins. The winner of that one gets to fight the loser of that second Scarabs match for the opportunity to go to Group C. But the loser of match 6 there is just out. So you have to be careful where you're at if you're the Penguins right now. And depending on whether it's the Wargs or the Titans, whoever joins them down there is going to have to be careful, because that is the do or die situation to be in. Your run towards Worlds would end, your season actually would end right then and there. So a little bit of pressure now for the Penguins, but Charlie, with the showcase they had, I think we can say pretty assuredly that they played well, and that I'm really excited to see what they have to offer for us. We're going to be looking at them a little bit next week. Again, we're going to see the Wargs and the Titans. That's the last set of the day. But after this quick break, we're going to be jumping back over to Group A to get their second set of the day, see who's going to be finding themselves in the top portion of the bracket, who's going to be finding themselves in the bottom portion of the bracket, and all of that, though, right after this quick break.